Okay, let's start with the first slide. And we have Sheena, Clarita, good evening. Attorney Tanya will be coming in shortly. So we are live on 8 social media platforms, and these are Wanda Keeler, Lunas Pilipinas, Doc Marivic's page on X, CDCPH, Lunas Pilipinas on YouTube, if we don't get taken down, CDCPH on Rumble, and Lunas Pilipinas on Rumble. So welcome to everybody, whichever platforms you're watching us. We can see the comments from Facebook. So if you make comments, we can answer your comments and recognize you tonight. So good evening to Dina. Good evening to I am AC. Good evening to Lenny. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so who are Lunas Pilipinas? We are a coalition and community of concerned Filipinos and friends of the Philippines who have united around the issue of medical and personal freedom. Our members include a whole range of different concerned groups, including concerned doctors and citizens of the Philippines, Wanda Keeler, legal light workers, and a whole range of other groups. If anybody is interested in joining the coalition, please do contact us via one of our pages, and we can add you to our list and our network, which we're looking forward to growing as we go forward and become a stronger community. Okay, next slide. And here we have Tess B is from Cavite. We have Lucky Otiv who's saying good evening to everybody from San Juan City. I used to live in San Juan City when I first came to the Philippines. Now I live in another place. Okay, so what do Lunas Pilipinas believe? We believe in a divine creator who created us in his image and likeness. We believe in free will and human rights, freedom of choice and informed consent. And these are very important with the current developments with the UN and the World Health Organization. And tonight we will be talking about the latest moves from the UN as they're moving towards pushing the One World Government agenda. So we believe in personal and national sovereignty, self-sufficiency, and self-reliance. And we also believe that the Philippines has an important role to play in the liberation and great awakening of humanity. Okay, we also have the following. Our mission is to facilitate healing from the division and trauma caused by COVID-19 and to find solutions to the various challenges we face as a nation. We believe that because we are all part of the problem, we are each part of the solution. Each one of us can make a difference. Tayo ang Lunas, may Lunas Pilipinas. Okay, so good evening to Marilu. Good evening to Nids. Okay, so let's keep going. Oh, we have someone from, Nids is from Taguig. Okay, so one of our members is also CDC PH, that's post-pandemic med health. This is for people who have had vaccine injuries. This group can be reached on Facebook. Please do reach out if you're concerned. This is a really a strong group, and they're often able to provide assistance to people. So they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of committed people working there. Next slide. Okay, so under the CDCPH and post-pandemic med health, we also have the Pure Life group. This is a network of people, or it's a database of people who are willing to donate blood. This is for unvaccinated blood, because vaccinated and unvaccinated people, when they receive blood from vaccinated donors, they can have adverse impacts on their health. So how can you be a donor? You must be 18 to 60 years of age. You shouldn't have maintenance meds. You should be at least 50 kilograms of weight and without any serious health conditions like cancer, hepatitis, malaria, or HIV. Please contact this number. All data will be kept confidential. So the procedure is, if someone needs blood, they will check the database and see which person is closest to the person who needs blood donor, and then they'll contact those people and see who's available to give blood donations. Okay, so here we have Dee Pereiras. Good evening. We have Chad Ladial from Borongan City, Eastern Samar. Hey, welcome. We also, who else we have? We have Ariel Alder. Okay, so this is why we don't have Dr. Amarivic here tonight. Dr. Amarivic has been insanely busy over the last couple of months organizing her World Council for Health Florida Detox and Wellbeing Fair. This is on the 12th of October and the 13th of October. Filipinos are invited. We have a very special price just for Filipinos. That's 300 pesos as opposed to $27 for people who are in the US. We know that we're going to have, I think Dr. Landrito is going to Florida specifically for this, and he'll be presenting. And Doc Marivic has got a lot of very well-known people in freedom and health movement who will be speaking. Surely Dr. McCullough. I know that she's trying to see if she could get Ken RFK. That's the RFK who has given up or partly given up his presidential campaign in the US to work with Trump. And he is now focusing on a platform of Make America Healthy Again. So I know that Dr. Amarivic, she's going to see if he could either talk or if he could at least give them a pre-recorded welcome or comment to support their fair. So this should be a good event. We all know that Dr. Amarivic has been working so hard for the Philippines. You know, she's a Filipina, she's in Florida, but her heart is really for the Filipinos. So, you know, not only will you support her, you will be learning something. So I'm also going to try and attend. It's on Saturday and Sunday, 2 weeks from now. Okay, so we have Dim Sum Chef. Hi, good evening, Salahat. Yay. And we have, who else we have? We have Dennis Profeta. Good evening, CDCPH, Juan de Kilo de Patriots. It's Saturday evening, and yes, it is. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so tonight's topic is very important. It's the UN Pact of the Future. And this is quite a disturbing painting. I need to check who was the original, let me see, the painter of this. We had a comment on who the painter is. It's quite a disturbing image, and it's also showing the WHO. And that's what is happening. So the original painting is it's by Botong Francisco. I'm assuming this is a Filipino painter. Very, very interesting and disturbing. Okay, which is kind of the way we somehow feel about the potential of the WHO and the UN moving forward with their agenda for a one world government, where all nations of the world have to follow what they're told by the UN. And the Philippine government has expressed their support for the UN Pact of the Future. And Attorney Tanya will speak about this further when she comes into the show. She was having dinner and she'll be here shortly. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a very poignant. We're going to have the 1 year anniversary of the death of Doc Iggy Agbayani. He is one of our heroes, and he died in prison. Very unfortunate case. And we believe he was made a political example. So his first anniversary will be next Saturday, October 5th. There'll be a novena at 5 p.m. at the Holy Trinity Parish Church, San Jose Heights, Quezon City. So we just like, to remind everybody to please keep Doc Iggy and his family in your prayers and in your thoughts. We do believe that when people die, their energy continues. And we hope he's looking down on us and giving us whatever guidance he can. And yes, please keep him in mind. He was a friend of mine. I knew him personally, and he was a very good man, very much missed. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Congressman Dan, we haven't heard much of him. Sorry, I have to correct myself. We have heard a lot from him, but we haven't heard anything from him with regards to the excess deaths inquiry, because he has been very, very busy in Congress. He's been dealing with the budget. He's been dealing with the POGO issue, and he's also been studying. So Congressman Dan has just been awarded his master's in public safety administration. So we would like to congratulate Congressman Dan. We have no idea how he does it. We have no idea how he fits so much into his schedule, but we'd really like to congratulate him. And we also very much hope that when things settle down slightly, we can continue with the excess deaths inquiry, because we really are still having a concern with the health of Filipinos and with the outcomes of the COVID vaccines. And I've been following the excess deaths. Of course, I've been following the vital statistics. And the 2023 vital statistics, the deaths are already more than 2022. So we still have increasing deaths in the Philippines. And the data is still not complete. If we have time later, I will present the latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority. And if we don't have time, I'll present it in a week or maybe next week or the week after. Or else, hopefully, I can present it to Congressman Dan and his colleagues in the House of Representatives if the inquiry will continue. So the inquiry was not ended. It was only suspended. It was adjourned to be continued. So there has been no conclusion yet. So Tesby has said, remembering Doc Iggy with love and prayers. Yes, please do. I mean, he has a young daughter and a beautiful wife. And, they say that time helps, but it wouldn't help with missing him. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so what we've done tonight is we have a whole selection of news so we can show what's happening around the world and in the Philippines. And later Tanya will talk when she comes in. So this is in Ireland. We know that all over the world, the UN has been encouraging nations to put in place censorship and to restrict freedom of speech. And by restricting freedom of speech, they also restrict people's ability to know what's happening. So although that is happening on one hand, we also have a lot of people fighting back. So there had been plans in Ireland to introduce hate speech laws, and then there was a lot of pushback from the people, and there was now a massive free speech victory, and Ireland's government has abandoned its proposed hate speech laws, which would have allowed police to enter homes and search phones and computers for wrongthink. This is like, the government is controlling your thoughts and the thought police. And Australia has the same thing happening. I think we'll see in the next slide. Yes, indeed. Nathan Aria and Gaba has just said, resist the UN of the future. It's all about control and persecution. It's all about, I agree, it's about not letting people speak. If nobody knows what's happening, how can you know that something is wrong? So I think our ability to speak freely, to share information, such as we're doing tonight, is absolutely critical. And also our ability to challenge what we think we know, because we have seen repeatedly over the last 4 years that many things that the government told us were, as almost as dogma, as correct have been proven to be wrong. We were told that masks will protect you, and we know that masks don't protect people because any virus is far smaller than the whole pores in any mask. So a mask cannot protect us. We were told that the vaccines were safe and effective. Unfortunately, they are not effective because we've now seen that the more vaccines people have, the higher their risk of catching COVID is. Even though it has been seen to have some protection for death from COVID, however, it seems that the side effects are far worse, and the excess deaths all over the world, unofficially, because governments are still not recognizing that, being linked with the vaccines. And I've done a lot of data research, and in every country that I've looked at, the deaths definitely follow the same pattern as vaccine introduction. So I'm rather, I don't understand why people cannot look at the data and say there has to be a link, in case many governments are still denying any link, and many governments even are still pushing COVID-19 vaccines on their people, though fortunately not in the Philippines. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this article is a headline from 4 days ago. This was after the UN Pact for the Future it wasn't approved. They have a procedure for that they call the silent procedure, where if nobody objects, they say that it's been approved. So they will discuss it, and then if no one objects, they say it's been approved. It hasn't actually been approved. This is just a way of pushing things through without allowing people to speak. So, the Pact for the Future is essentially going to be a law. We don't know the implications of this because it's rather vague at this point, but it's definitely something we have to be watching out for. And when Tanya comes in, she will talk about this because I know that she's done some research on this. I haven't done a lot on this yet. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is from February, 6th of February 2024, and the Philippines is involved in a lot of UN activities, and the Philippine delegation were involved with the first reading of the Pact for the Future. And the Philippine government has expressed their support. So, the wording for the Pact for the Future is nice wording, but when you read behind the words, they're talking about control. They're talking about expediting the goals for 2030. They're talking about inclusivity, which these agendas can mean anything but actual inclusivity. It can be difficult. It's a challenging topic. There's lots of people writing about this in the alternative media. The mainstream media is still not talking about this. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is Robert Malone. Of course, we all know who Robert Malone is. He was one of the, he was the early inventor of the mRNA platform, and he has spoken out that he didn't see how the mRNA platform could be safe, and he has been quite vocal. So what he says, horrific. These socialist documents give the UN power and control over nations. The US Senate must reject this agreement before it is too late. And the article that he was commenting on was the UN member countries adopted the landmark Pact for the Future on Sunday. And they didn't adopt. It was, as I said, it was a silent procedure. They just didn't object. But effectively, this will become a law. And the agreement will pave the way for greater international cooperation which sounds nice, but by greater international cooperation, they mean under the direction of the UN. And similar to the pandemic agreement, these will be commercial arrangements whereby people will be obligated to pay money towards. They will be obligated for certain products or certain behaviors. So it will be very important. Um, we hope that the Philippines Congress would be sure that they should be overseeing and having oversight for anything that the UN is asking. And here's Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Welcome.
Hi, Sally. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Magandang gabi po.
Yay. So, Tanya, we're just beginning to talk about the Pact for the Future. So, are you ready to talk about that?
Have we gone through all the other news already?
No, because we've just gone through the order of the slides that they're presented in, and we've currently come up to we've got the Robert Malone slide at the moment,
Mhm.
and just he's commenting that these are socialist documents giving the UN power and control over nations, and he's
Mm.
calling for the US Senate to reject this agreement. And
Mm-mm.
I also mentioned that the acceptance, the adoption of this landmark pact was not really an adoption because it was a silent procedure whereby they assume it's accepted or adopted if nobody objects.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Um, well, I'm still going over it actually, and before we jump into any conclusions, I'd like to encourage everyone. Um, if you have a chance to read the documents, I think we should all read the documents before we come into any conclusion. So I'll be posting the link to the documents, and for if there are any lawyers or law students or poli sci students, college students listening, I'd like to encourage everyone to read this, because I think, okay, it's true that this is a resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly. It wasn't put to a vote, okay, but I would argue that this is not exactly a treaty. Okay, it's not a treaty in the same way that the pandemic treaty is a treaty, or the international health regulations of the WHO are arguably a treaty. In law, we call this soft law. Okay, it's soft law. It's not binding. Okay, and the document says that it's not binding. However, that being said, we still have to be on our guard because they're already telegraphing to us what their intentions are. No? So, Sally, if you don't mind, we can go through the other news before coming back to this. I'd like to have some time to go over this before we tackle it. But based on my initial reading of this, we read this over dinner, kami ni Andy. Um, we think that we see traces already of where they want to bring us. Okay, but I wouldn't exactly conclude automatically that we should be alarmed just yet.
Okay, I understand that one of the objectives is to advance the agenda, the 2030 agenda, and
Yes,
also to advance the climate narratives. So,
and and more importantly, I think they talk about digitalization. So they talk
yes,
about the digital future. They talk about artificial intelligence. That is the main entry. That is the main entry point. And if they're concerned about global totalitarianism, global takeover, it's going to happen digitally. It's going to happen through artificial intelligence, and it's going to happen through vaccines, for example, that will connect us to the internet and connect us to each other. Yung tinatawag na internet of bodies, you know. So that's a lot. It can be overwhelming, but I think we're going to have a lot to discuss in the months moving forward. We'll have to expand beyond just talking about the medical aspect of it. We'll have to start talking about tech. We'll have to start talking about the digital currency. So we're going to have a lot to talk about in the months to come, Sally.
indeed, indeed. And we actually have a lot of research to do because these are not easy topics. So, this Pact for the Future, I understand it's about 80 pages. Is it hard reading or it's something that anybody can understand?
um, it's a no. Well, Well, of course, I think you need to have some understanding of the basic principles. So it's definitely not grade school or high school reading.
I know.
Not in lay people's language, okay? But for the college graduates, and I think many of our listeners have, some college have graduated, have some advanced degrees. I think hindi naman kayo masyadong magno-nosebleed, you know. But we can, kumbaga, this is not just a legal document. Kumbaga, let me just put it that way. You don't have to be a lawyer to read this document, okay? But you will need to do some additional research because it talks about historical documents of the United Nations. It talks about the Sustainable Development Goals. It makes reference to outer space. They talk about outer space. They talk about protection of the children, protection of children from online predators, things like that. So, it's a lot. It's a lot. But the document that I'm holding, so this document, I'm going to share the link sa ating Facebook, contains the main resolution as adopted, along with the annexes. So you have the Declaration for Future Generations, and you have the Digital Global Compact. And it's 56 pages. It's not 80 pages. It's 56, including the annexes.
Okay, I read something 80, but yeah, I haven't physically taken a look at that yet.
Yeah.
So all of us have to become aware global citizens now.
Yes.
In the past, before COVID, we went about our life without much awareness of what was going on in the global scene. But now it becomes very important to understand that we are part of a global community, and the activities or the measures taken in the global community also affect us here.
That's right. And Super Sally, I'd also like to emphasize to our listeners that we are part of a global community, and I think it's now time that we have to join forces with the international freedom fighters from all over the world. And I was talking with one of our allies in government. Binrief niya ako about the Pact for the Future and what was happening in New York. And sabi niya, bakit hindi tayo seemingly connected to the other freedom fighters, no? Parang nag-rally sa Japan, nag-rally sa United States, nag-rally sa Europe. Bakit walang nag-rally dito? And parang we don't seem to be connected to the global movements, no? And so I think we need to do that. And actually, even here in the Philippines, parang we don't seem to be organized and integrated, no? And we seem to be, binabati lang natin ng Juan Dakila, binabati lang natin ng CDCPH. I still sense a reluctance to acknowledge the movement, no? The movement towards a global or a national movement, which is what Lunas Pilipinas is trying to be, So if we want to go global, we have to go national, and we have to go beyond our small little parochial groups and work together, and that's what we've been trying to do with Lunas Pilipinas over the last 2 years. And so yung pakiusap sana sa ating mga manonood, I know that you identify with certain groups, but sana we can now start looking at ourselves as a national movement, a Philippine movement, and go beyond our small parochial groups that we started with.
Yeah, it's always a challenge working out how to grow groups, because some of this is organic, and if people are watching and they feel that something needs to be done, I would very much encourage people to step up. This is the time we need leaders, and we need supporters for leaders. So you need to step in. We all need to step into our power to do what we can, and we all have different roles. But very, very important that we communicate and work together, as each of us does whatever we are best at doing.
Yes, that's right.
I research, I document. I've been looking at data, and I see my role is to provide that data to whoever I can provide that to, and to share that, to support other people's activities.
Right. And then, for the legal team, sila Attorney Aaron, myself, Attorney Ting, the JD volunteers, focusing on the legal aspect. There are the teachers among you who've been listening. I'm sure you're doing what you can to educate the parents and the students who are within your care, diba? And we have different roles to play. But one of the things, no, that I'd like to mention right now, Super Sally, and I see this in the other groups because I'm in touch with the other freedom fighting groups. Nakakalungkot is yung ego, how people's egos come into the picture, and so you hear about infighting or fighting amongst groups. So you have, for example, rivalries within the United States, the different freedom fighting groups, nagbabangayan, nagbabanggaan, saying nasty things about each other, and even here, even in the process of growing Lunas Pilipinas, we've had issues na, we're human, we have different personalities, and sometimes there's friction among groups. And I think it's really part of the agenda that they want to keep us fighting among ourselves because
Correct. Yeah.
we can't unify if people are so busy, looking after their ego, looking after self-promotion, and that's one of the main challenges. But it's not unique only to this incident. I think it's happened all throughout human history, di ba, Sally?
Yeah, in Australia, there's been major issues with that, and then you look even at people like Robert Malone and everyone saying, oh, they're what are they? They're controlled opposition, controlled
Yeah,
opposition, and I think we do a great discredit not taking people at face value. So I know a lot of people say, oh, the High Wire and Del Bigtree, they're doing a lot of work on education, but then there's other people who say they're controlled opposition, they're being paid. But you know, I don't think that's the case actually. I could be wrong, but I prefer to take people at face value and look at the work that they're doing.
right.
And let's all do what we can and pull together. I mean, the Philippines is a classic. You just look at our government.
Hmm.
Just look at Congress and the Senate and what's happening there, and that's the big scale of our government. How can we solve all these problems when they're so busy focusing on infighting and political rivalry and egos? And I'm a foreigner. Okay, I've been in the Philippines for nearly 30 years. Um, the biggest thing for me is people take things too personally. I
Hmm.
mean, this is because Filipinos, people have the biggest hearts here. They absolutely care. But we need to say at the end of the day, let's do what we need to do and make a decision not to get offended. Try and understand the situation, but don't take it too personally. Because I think we risk losing a lot of good people when people take offense too easily and then they withdraw. So, when people get upset about things, I would say, well, be a duck. Be a duck. You're waterproof. Let it roll off. Just let it roll off and let's keep going. Don't take offense too easily. That's one of my little pet peeves about working and living here. Yeah, I mean, I've had staff resign because someone said the wrong thing to them.
Yeah.
Instead of them working it out and saying, okay, I was offended when this happened, they just quit. So let's not quit. Let's work through our conflicts.
Mhm.
Um, the enemy want us to be divided,
Yeah.
and we should counter that by being united. Being united despite our differences, because ultimately our goal is to fight for the children, to
Mhm.
fight for the future, and to fight for the nation.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Super Sally, it seems that I have a hater already on Facebook. Lance,
Really?
yeah, Lance Lee, fake news peddler. Tanya Lat, conspiracy theorist. Tanya Lat, fake news peddler. Okay, so
Oh,
I think we're making a difference when people start branding us that way.
yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Lance.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Sige, post lang ng post. Hopefully, instead of just posting, you will also engage us. The reason why we have this broadcast is primarily to expose the truth. Diba? Instead of just labeling us as conspiracy theorists, try to disprove what we're saying. Try to
Yeah.
try to engage us and say why we're wrong. Okay, Tanya Lat and Aaron Sogelon are idiots. Okay, sige. So this is actually indicative of the kind of culture that the elites want us to engage in. Okay, so we have misinformation, diba? We have disinformation. we have people trying to destroy political discourse. Okay, so instead of being able to talk about things in a rational and in a reasonable way, instead, what people do is they start canceling, they start branding, they start saying all sorts of nasty things, 'di ba? So Lansley, you are lawyers that do not have scientific knowledge, you know. In these broadcasts, we present facts. We present arguments, and the purpose really is, don't take our word for it. You know, Lansley, don't take our word for it. If you have been following our broadcasts, we always tell people, do your own research. Don't take my word for it just because I'm a lawyer. Don't just take the word of your doctors for it just because they are doctors. We have to do our own research. We have to do our own analysis, you know, and that's what we've been trying to educate people about. Okay. And if people hide behind mga ganitong mga accounts, no, hindi kayo nagpapakita ng muka, hindi kayo nagsasabi ng totoong pangalan, hindi kayo nagpapakilala, okay? So how can we build trust online, 'di ba? If you're hiding behind a fake identity, behind a fake profile. And this is really the main danger, I think one of the dangers behind digitalization, you know, with the internet, with the creation of fake accounts, people feel that they can say anything and everything. They can be rude, they can be nasty, they can be bastos, and they can do it with impunity because walang accountability. 'Di ba? So,
Yeah.
you know, that's I think that's one of the hidden dangers, no, in a digital world where people hide behind, you know, these things. Pero if you were to meet these people, chances are hindi nila sasabihin to kung kaharap ka eh. They're not going to say these things face to face. You
Yeah,
know,
this is the internet can be a platform for cowards
yes.
who cannot say anything, and the idea they will slur in order to try and discredit. But by doing that, the only person they discredit is themselves. And
Mhm.
ultimately, the best thing to do is simply to ignore.
Yeah.
Simply to ignore and not to engage. So I think we've said enough about Lance Lee, and I
Mhm.
don't think we should discuss this person any further. If he
Further.
is even a person, or she
Yes,
is
that's
even a
right.
person.
Because it's possible that it's a bot. You know, it's one of
Correct.
those automated things. But yes, you know, just going back to what you said, Super Sally, no, you know, Filipinos tend to take things very personally, and when you
Yes.
are attacked, you know, when you're attacked, the tendency really is to defend yourself, no, and so I think this can be a learning, a teachable moment, as we call it, you know, in
Yes.
education.
Very much.
When we have things like this that happen to us, let's see what it's trying to teach us, no? So I see that it's trying to teach me self-restraint. It's trying to teach me how not to react and how to set an example for our viewers, no? Na let's try not to take it personally. You know, parang ako parang okay, you know, once you're a public figure, um, you know, it's part of the job. And we have a saying, Super Sally, in Filipino,
Yes.
to the effect that um, if, for example, you're a tree, no, you're a tree. Only trees that bear fruit are the subject of stoning, kumbaga. So, you know, kids, when the mango trees are full of mangoes, you know, they're going to throw rocks and they're going to throw stones at the mango tree so that the mangoes fall, you know.
Mm,
So the saying basically says that if someone's, you know, kung tinitira kayo ng tao, if someone is targeting you, it's probably because you're saying something right, or you have you're bearing fruit, you know, and they're either trying to harvest the fruit or they're trying to prevent people from,
yes.
you know, benefiting from your fruits.
Yes, very much, very much. So this is, you know, as we were saying, this is a very good example. I mean, Attorney Tanya will not take an attack like this personally. It doesn't affect her at all, except that now she's made this into a positive learning experience for everybody. So,
So
yes.
thank you, Ansley.
Yes, excellent. Excellent.
Thank
Okay, so moving on.
Ayun, kapag ang puno hitik sa bunga, ito ay binabato. Okay, so if a tree is laden with fruits, it will be, you know, the subject of yeah, it will be targeted.
Yay.
Yeah. All right. Pero wag naman natin i-bully si Lansley. Okay? So wag natin gawin sa kapwa ang ginagawa sa atin if we're being bullied, if we are being vilified, you know. Let's not do that because we descend to their energy. They want us to get angry. They want us to get offended. If we get offended, we stop doing what we're doing. 'Di ba? So
And
like
we stop doing something better because
right.
our energy has been diverted. And this is very important for us to teach our children, to understand not to take social media personally or to
Yes.
be affected, because so many children can be badly bullied by a social media, which is, an invisible bully. It's an invisible bully that you can't fight back against.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's really a social media phenomenon. Kasi when we were younger, Super Sally, di ba? It's like I think we've all had some bullies in our lives. But the nice thing about bullying when we were younger was that after school, you can go home and the bully's not there, and you can finally rest and rest to fight another day. But with cyberbullying, with the cyber attacks, it's 24/7, and the internet does not forget, diba? So
Yeah.
that's really one of the dangers of this digital era, that the bullying persists, it continues and it stays, no, and it is available to a global audience because it's available to everyone, no. So that's
But
yes.
the Australian government is trying to bring in a law whereby young people will be banned from accessing social media, and
Mm,
this is going way too far. They're saying it's to protect young people, but if young people are not able to access or are not legally able to access social media platforms, this will also limit their access to ideas and information. So banning access is not the solution. Learning how to use and being educated about how to appropriately use social media, what sort of limits you need to place on social media, is the correct approach. Not banning, as in Australia. Australia is turning into a fascist nation. They really want to control everybody. So yeah, they have the misinformation, disinformation bill. I think we have a slide on that later, where the government wants to bring in laws that if social media companies don't block certain content, they will be subject to massive fines. And the content that would be blocked would be anything that the government decides should be blocked.
yeah.
So this would be a way to control the sort of access that, or sort of information that people can get and what they can and can't know.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of information, Lansley, we haven't blocked Lansley, and Lansley has posted again, saying that Lunas Pilipinas is the page that should be reported to Mark Zuckerberg for proliferation of misleading information about health. So maybe for Lansley's benefit, we can remind him about the letter that Mark Zuckerberg circulated a few weeks ago, and Super Sally, maybe you can discuss that, about where he mentioned very publicly that the Biden administration supposedly pressured him into censoring information relating to the pandemic.
Yeah, and also there was a lot of censorship done against the Trump administration, and the censorship was very specific against certain parties. For example, Kamala Harris is having only positive media, where President Trump is only having negative media. So you can see that the social media is trying to set up a certain narrative. And
Mm.
if we don't train ourselves to be discerning about how we read social media, how we understand what we see. In the past, when I was young, many years ago, when we looked at the news, we accepted that the news was truth.
Right.
Of course, it probably wasn't, but we really thought that the news was telling us what was happening in a fair manner. But nowadays, I think the news is very much controlled. And when you look at the news and you see that every single station is saying exactly the same thing, using the same words at the same time, you realize that the media is being used to present a narrative. And if you want to understand what's happening behind the narrative, you need to go to the non-mainstream media sources. And there's quite a number of those. Twitter is a good place to start. X is a good place to start now. They have quite a few news. The Vigilant Fox, there's quite a number of groups that are giving very good information, so that you can see what's happening that mainstream media is not talking about. Tanya, I haven't watched the news for several years.
Same.
But I would have to say I think I'm more aware of what's happening in the world now than I ever was in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way, no. So here here in the Philippines, I remember there was a time that we really could rely on our newscasters. They were very credible. They were people of integrity, and it's like you really got a sense that if you were listening to the news, you were listening to someone who was telling you the truth. But that has changed a lot over the last few decades. News is more entertainment than anything else,
Yeah,
and now with the control, you've probably seen those clippings. Sorry, the video montages where in the U.S. they've put together different clips from different news reports and basically putting them beside each other, one after the other, and it's pretty much parang there's a same narrative.
even
Diba?
the same tone of voice,
Mm,
exactly the same words, the same tone of voice. And you see that there's only one very limited set of news being presented,
yeah,
and we have to understand that this is part of the psyop that has taken place over the
yeah.
last years to control what we do and how we think. And for me, I'm curious, why did some of us not be affected by this when
Mm.
other people seem to completely believe what they're seeing? So, I think this is a very interesting research. What made us different compared to other people? So, for everyone who's listening, congratulations on being different. Okay,
Yeah.
we are not the conformists. We are the questioners.
Yes, and siguro let's take them up on your question, Super Sally. No, so for everyone who's listening, whether on JD, CDCPH, or Lunas Pilipinas or Streamyard, um, how is it na hindi kayo naloko? 'Di ba? Let's try to understand. No? Please respond to Super Sally's question. What made you disbelieve? What made you not buy into the narrative? What has made you question? What mainstream media has been saying. No, and let's try to understand what makes us unique from the others
Yeah.
who are still blinded or still deceived. Ba?
I can personally trace, for me, I can trace back when I was a student and I
Mhm.
was doing my thesis. And I know allied health. So I was doing research on pain and back pain. And when I was researching, I realized that the number of surgeries, back surgeries in any place was directly proportional to the number of surgeons. It had nothing to do with the number of people. And that opened my eyes that doctors make their own business. It doesn't mean, if you have chiropractors, they would manage people with chiropractic. If you have surgeons, they will manage people with surgery.
Hmm.
And and then I also determined that no matter if you did surgery or didn't do surgery, the outcome was usually the same. It didn't make a difference for
Oh,
most people.
wow.
So that was really, that opened my eyes that medicine is not a be all and end all. And yeah, that started my questioning. And then of course I also had personal experiences where I saw that medical advice or medical treatment was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to personally research and find a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that came through my personal experience and personal health challenges. I had to save myself, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
once you go through that experience, you will never trust the same way again. And of course, I thank my dad and my mom because they also raised me to question things. So I guess it's a generational thing as well.
Yes, perhaps, no. I am Ace said common sense. I realize it is not common anymore.
Maybe it never has been.
Maybe, and when you look at all the freedom movements, you look at all the reform movements throughout the centuries, the changes in history have happened not because of the mainstream or because of the majority, but because of the minority that dared to question the status quo and decided to work for a better system.
And this is why it is so very important that censorship is not allowed. Because in order for society to grow, to be vibrant, to change, to have, new advances, the new advances are not mainstream. The new advances come when someone was thinking outside the box and then they were allowed to develop that idea. But if we go with the misinformation, disinformation, and people are not allowed to speak out against a narrative, how are we going to advance society?
Right.
So I think we need to really, really protect our vigorous discourse, our education, our challenging, our arguing, even, because that's how we improve ourselves and improve society and make things better.
That's right. So, for those of you listening who are nonconformists, para sa mga iba mag-isip, para dun sa willing mag-dissent, willing mag-object, you are very important to our society. I always tell my law students that the dissents of today are the majority opinion of tomorrow. So, meaning many of the changes in doctrine and the improvements in the legal system over the years have been because of people, brave lawyers and brave judges and justices who dared to question the existing narrative, the existing status quo, because they saw that something was wrong and something needed to be changed. You know, and at first they are dissenting opinions. At first, mag-isa lang sila. But over time, people begin to see the value of their arguments. They begin to see the truth of the evidence that they present. And eventually, people's minds change. And that's how we advance. That's how we become better as a people, as a Filipino nation, and as the human species. Because people are not stuck in the status quo. People dare to question, especially if things are not working, if things are unjust, if things are unfair, if things are harming people, we definitely have to question so that things change for the better.
Okay, let's keep going. I think we have some more slides.
Okay, sige. We can tackle, Super Sally, the news that we weren't able to tackle last week.
Yes, I think we have slides on that.
Sige. Yung Summit of
Here we
the
go.
Future, let's
Oh
say,
no, this one is a summary of what was included. So
Mhm.
I think it's let's go to the next slide. This happened a week ago.
Mhm.
Okay, so
But this, yeah, Super Sally, I'd rather that we tackle these headlines together with the substantive discussion.
okay, no problem.
That's okay? Yeah.
Yep, sure.
And I think some people are looking forward to the medical news.
Yes. Okay, so let's keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something in the water. This is a wonderful news out of the US. There has been a court case that has been running in the US for about 7 years, and it was a challenge against water fluoridation. And the NIH, that's the National Institute of Health, has confirmed that fluoride exposure is linked to lower IQ in children. And the court case was a win in that the judge confirmed that there was the risk of fluoridation was too high, and that fluoridation should be stopped. So this was a case against the EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency, because in the US there's many counties where it's mandated to add fluoride to the water, and the purpose of adding fluoride to water is purportedly to protect teeth and to prevent cavities. But unfortunately, fluoride is also neurotoxic, and particularly when pregnant women or in early infancies, babies are exposed to fluoride, it results in lower IQ. So if a child has lower IQ, that means potential is also reduced. So this is a major news. If you're on X, you could just look up fluoride and you'll see the case. So this is big news. This is good. I don't think we have fluoridation in the Philippines. I think it has been spoken of sometimes, but nothing has been done here. We definitely have fluoridation in Australia, and there's people fighting against that. And this ruling will be a major benefit in that fight. However, in the Philippines, I know that sometimes pediatricians recommend fluoride drops for babies who are
really?
bottle fed.
Wow.
I've heard of that. You can buy fluoride drops, and they put the drops in the formula to give the baby, fluoride, so its teeth will be protected.
Yeah.
So this is something that people need to be aware of. Fluoride should not be taken by anybody. It's neurotoxic, meaning
Mm-hmm.
it causes brain damage. It can also interfere with thyroid function. And if you have thyroid problems, that's also a problem for your health and well-being, and it can be fatal. In the Philippines, you'll often see people with big lumps on their neck,
Hmm.
and this can
Okay.
be because the Philippines, I think there's problem with iodine deficiency.
Yeah.
So we do see people with goiters, which is from thyroid malfunction. But all over the world, there's been a rise in thyroid malfunction, and I think it's due to chemicals in the environment, and fluoride would be one of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Super Sally, can you talk about fluoride in toothpaste? Because most of our toothpaste here, like Colgate, for example, with
yeah,
fluoride.
okay, so we do know that topical fluoride, that means fluoride that's applied on the teeth only, can improve their hardness. And that's why they do fluoride treatment.
Mhm.
But the problem is if you swallow it or if you hold the toothpaste in your mouth for a long time, you're going to be absorbing fluoride as well. And
Mhm.
the other problem is when people use lots of fluoride toothpaste, it goes into the water. And then
Mm.
that water will end up being recycled, and people may also get contaminated that way. Should you not use fluoride toothpaste? I would say for babies, they shouldn't.
Uh-huh.
And you can buy non fluoride toothpaste for babies because babies swallow the toothpaste, they can't
Yeah,
spit.
they can't spit.
For
Yeah.
adults, I think you should use minimum amounts. I use non fluoride toothpaste for myself. I prefer
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, we're not doctors. We cannot make recommendations, but please be aware that fluoride is neurotoxic. When you use toothpaste, use only what you need. Maybe don't use excessive amounts.
Yeah.
No, I can't tell anyone what to do on this, but be aware that fluoride is toxic.
I wonder if there are non-chemical or at least non-mainstream chemical alternatives. Like I've heard of using baking soda to
Oh
brush your.
yeah, yeah. Baking soda. Some people use activated carbon.
Mhm.
The carbon powder. I think for cleaning teeth, it is. I mean, native people used to like chew on sticks to clean their
Mm.
teeth,
Mm.
because we do know that oral hygiene is absolutely critical for health.
Yes.
If you have rotten teeth, you can actually get meningitis from, brain inflammation from a rotten tooth. We also know that if you have gum disease, the bacteria from that can affect your heart.
Mm.
So, absolutely, your oral health is one of the most important things you could do for your health. Seeing a dentist regularly if you have teeth problems is also important. So,
Mm.
proper teeth cleaning, yeah, you know, we always have to balance everything we do. There's risk and benefit. The benefit of good oral hygiene is critical. You can also buy non-fluoridated toothpaste. Here in the Philippines, Human Nature is one of the very common brands.
Mhm.
And I see it's on the regular supermarket shelf. You do have choices of non-fluoride toothpaste.
Yeah.
So you can choose to use non-fluoride toothpaste, and do make sure you clean your teeth. And the
Mm.
other thing you can do is after you eat, even if you're not cleaning your teeth, you rinse your mouth with water. So
Mm.
you squish your mouth with water after eating, so that you help to remove any food or whatever.
Mm-mm.
'Cause, we're all about overall good health, and oral
Yeah.
health is one of the most important parts of that.
And I just realized, Super Sally,
Yes.
I don't think we have a dentist yet within the network, no, like CDCPH.
I don't know. No, I know that there are some in some other groups. I've been on some groups on Telegram that
Mm-hmm.
I have seen dentists in the group. So I think there are,
Okay.
but maybe they're quiet. They're not active that we know of. So we
Yeah.
do welcome all sorts of allied health professionals. Everybody is important.
Yes.
So, if we have dentists, please do let us know. Please do
Yes.
let us know. You're welcome. Everyone is welcome here.
Mm.
And if we have a dentist here who would like to talk about how we can optimize oral health, we could do a session on that one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And tama yung sinabi mo, Super Sally, that we tend to neglect oral health. We tend not to go to the dentist unless we have a toothache. But we're now seeing how important oral health is, no? And a lot of, like, for example, migraine headaches. For example, sometimes migraine headaches or pain somewhere else in the head can actually originate in the mouth. It can originate in a nerve, in a rotten tooth. So, and everything is connected, as we know. We have a saying in Filipino, ang sakit ng kalingkingan, the pain in the pinky finger, uh, nararamdaman sa buong katawan, can be felt in the whole body. And so, as we take care of our health, let's make sure to take care of our mouth, our teeth, because it's important for our overall health.
Yeah, and for the children here, you often see children with very rotten teeth. That's
Mm.
unfortunately very common here. And some of that comes from children just being allowed to eat lots of sugars and sweets. But the other thing is that dental caries is contagious. So if
Oh,
the
really?
mother, yes,
Yeah.
it's contagious. The bacteria there's a specific bacteria that contributes. So if the mother or if the yaya has poor oral health,
Mm-hmm.
then she can actually pass that to the child.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, so if for all the mummies out there, if you're going to have a nanny for your child, you want to get somebody who has good teeth, because inadvertently when you interact, you can pass it. It's contagious. It's
Oh, no.
contagious.
So, like,
Yeah.
through saliva?
Yes, through saliva, you have an oral biome. Just as we have our gut microbiome, we also
Yeah.
have an oral microbiome. And
Okay.
yeah, poor oral health the bacteria can be contagious. So
Oh.
it's not just the diet; it can also be the environment. And of course, cleaning and drinking water and not sweet. Drinking water rather than sweetened drinks is also very important.
Right. Yeah, and we've been talking about how sugar is a toxin and how it's
Correct.
bad for the body, and it can also hasten the rotting of the teeth, no?
Correct. Because it
Yeah.
feeds the bacteria that cause the caries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. So this is good news on fluoride, that everybody should be aware of environmental toxins, and fluoride is one of the major ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going back to the vaccine issue.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing some research because, of course, I write my Substack, and
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the articles that was in the newspaper last week, Philippine News Agency, that the 4P recipients, these are people who come from lower socioeconomic groups, and in order to get the 4P financial support, they need to follow medical and school rules. So the school rules mean that the children have to attend school at least 85% of the time in
Mm-hmm.
order to their parents to get this support, which I do actually agree with,
Mm-hmm.
assuming they have a good school to attend. But
That's
they
right.
are also required, the mothers and the children are required to follow medical rules, which includes pre and postnatal appointments for the mothers and compliance with recommended vaccines from Department of Health.
Ah.
So if if this aid is contingent on being vaccinated, there is no informed consent.
Right.
This is essentially coercion. If you want assistance, no matter your medical status, you must comply or you will not get this funding. Now, my point is that any vaccination is a medical intervention, and any medical intervention should be on a case by case basis because every person is different. So, I just had a reaction to this that there is apparently no informed consent in these circumstances. So the government sees this as a good way to capture a certain group of people and make them comply. We don't know. Maybe they want, maybe they don't want. But I hope that personal choice would be respected.
Yeah. And I think maybe we should look into that because, it's like people who receive 4Ps, these are the people who are really at the margins of society.
These are indigent people who really need assistance. And
Yeah.
the problem for people who are indigent, they may have malnutrition, they may
Mm,
have other health conditions, and it is actually risky to vaccinate people with malnutrition and health conditions.
that's right.
You will increase the risk of adverse outcomes. People who are underweight, that means that the dose that they get per body weight is relatively much larger than it would be for a larger person. So,
Yeah.
I think this is something that should be looked into. These people do need assistance, and I agree that they also are supposed to attend training sessions. There's all sorts of conditions
Yeah.
tied in with this. Um, are these helpful or are these a hindrance? Oh, sorry, my dog's barking. One sec.
Yeah. So this is also in relation to the Bakuna Eskwela. So IMA's posted, no, reminding us, we haven't forgotten. Magkakaroon ng Bakuna Eskwela starting October 7 in the public schools, no? So we will continue to sound the alarm regarding this, okay? As much as we want to not be perceived as anti-vax, some people have already labeled us as anti-vax, but we're really more accurately pro-informed choice. We believe that everyone has the right to physical autonomy. We have the right to our own bodies. We should not be forced to receive medical interventions like vaccines that can potentially harm us or even kill us. Okay. And if there is any intervention that is being mandated, whether it's for 4Ps, whether it's for school or any other requirements, we have the right to know what is going to happen to us. We have the right to protest and we have the right to say no. 'Di ba? So, para sa mga magulang, para sa ating mga guro na nakikinig, all hands on deck po sana. Let's band together. Let's try to warn people about, tell people about their rights. And for those who are already determined not to have their children vaccinated, let's give them the support that they need. No, given already our experiences, I'm sure many of us have had their own experiences with regard to the vaccines, with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic, the adverse events from the vaccines. We have every right to be skeptical and we have every right to say no if we don't want to accept it. No? And we also have the right to not be bullied. Kasi part of their plan is to find out, no? Kakausapin daw ng mga health worker yung mga magulang para alamin daw kung bakit ayaw magpabakuna. But we know that this is really an attempt to engage and exert peer pressure on people, no? And for people who don't have the support system or walang lakas ng loob, 'di ba, yung mga medyo may hina yung loob sa atin, we need to provide moral support and psychological support so that they know that they have a right to say no. It's a basic human right to take care of your body and to do with your body what you deem best for it and for your children, no?
Yes, so for the vaccination program on the 7th of October, the Department of Health has a notification letter that will go out to all parents. And the notification letter informs that the activity will take place and it requires that the parent gives a consent. Now, the parent, you have every right to give consent if you agree. You may give consent to one, 2 or none. It's up to you. So children could be given measles, rubella. They could be given DT with diphtheria, tetanus, and children who are 9 years old or grade 4 could be given HPV vaccines. Now, if as a parent you say, I want my child to get MR, but I don't want them to get the HPV, you have every right to do that. But you
Right.
need to be very careful that you specifically document what you want. And it would be better that you talk to the teachers to be sure that they know your wish. But yeah, up to you. You can say yes, 1, 2, 3, or none. Okay, it's your right, and do not be coerced into anything you don't want for your children.
Yeah. And so IMAs has posted, she said HPV will be injected to grade 4 female children and up. The HPV vax already caused a lot of injuries and deaths in Africa, India, and US.
And Australia.
And Australia. The
Yes,
manufacturer is now facing court trials due to the injuries caused by the shots.
that is correct. There's
Yeah.
cases happening in Australia as well, not just in the US.
Yeah. So there's that. You need to know that, and this is documented. It's not fake news. They try to hide this. I've come across journal articles, law journal articles. So these are not even medical studies. Even in the legal field, there's already a discussion about the harm that's been caused by different kinds of vaccines, no? So including HPV. And
Yeah,
then as we discussed, diba, last time, Super Sally, diba, HPV should only be injected in people who are not yet
sexually
sexually.
active or who have not had exposure to HPV. It is
Mhm.
possible for a child to have exposure to HPV from their mother. If she
Mhm.
is infected, they could be exposed by their mother.
Mhm.
Now, the problem with HPV is they say that it prevents cervical cancer, but actually, there is no evidence that it does prevent cervical cancer. So, if this vaccine actually prevented cervical cancer, you could say, okay, there are risks with the vaccine, but there's a benefit that it prevents cervical cancer. If this vaccine does not prevent cervical cancer, which there's a big question mark, although mainstream will not tell you, that means you only have risk. You do not have benefit. You only have risk. So this is a decision you need to know. And cervical cancer is a condition that can be screened for. It does require screening. The screening is very easy, and if it is caught early, it is very treatable. In the Philippines, many people don't have access to medical care. So, they're saying, okay, we assume that this vaccine presents cervical cancer. We know many of our women don't have access to medical care. So if we give them this vaccine, they will be protected from cervical cancer. But what if they're not protected? What if it increases their risk of cervical cancer and it still will not be caught? So I personally, my personal opinion is this is a risky vaccine, and I could not say that the benefits outweigh the risk. I cannot even say there's benefits. So make your own decision.
Mm-mm. I wonder about the Super Sally, no? Kasi, so I also go to see a gynecologist from time to time. And
Yes,
I have classmates from high school who are doctors, and they're also pushing the HPV vaccine. And I find it strange, no? Inaalok sa amin, we're being invited to be vaccinated, but it's supposed to be advisable for people who haven't had sexual contact. So it's like,
yes, correct.
why are
It
they
is
focusing on our age
no,
group?
it's all about money. I mean, I
Oh.
I am, sorry, I'm in my early 50s. I was offered an HPV vaccine maybe 3 years ago. And I know for a fact that I am outside of the age that should even be offered that. But I
Mm.
was told, oh, would you like this vaccine? It will prevent cervical cancer. That was how it was presented to me.
Yeah.
And I just said, no, no, thank you. And then I was offered 3 more times during the same appointment if I would like it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think unfortunately maybe doctors trust what they're told by the med reps without looking into it further.
Yeah.
That would be the kindest way, or maybe it's about money because the cost of the HPV vaccine is quite high.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very aware that the price that the doctors get these vaccines and other meds for, and the price that they sell them for to the public, there's a gap. So I believe they make quite a lot of money from these vaccines.
Yeah, and so super salient our listeners know. There was a time kasi that I used to work for a law firm, and I also got exposed to like some of the pharmaceutical side of the industry, no. And I also teach ethics, and I've come across studies involving the ethical dilemmas involving doctors. And it's well known within medical circles that the cost of a drug is just a small fraction of the actual selling price. And pharmaceutical companies have a big budget for marketing, advertisement, and promotion. So the advertisements are expensive, as you know, and also they spend a lot on the doctors. It's an open secret within the industry that pharma gives incentives to doctors. Med reps visit the doctors get rewards or perks the more times they prescribe a particular brand or a particular drug to their patients. There's a way of tracking so that they get rewarded or they get commissions. The pharmaceutical companies also sponsor their conferences. They sponsor trips. I've heard news that may open, kumbaga may blank check in a way yung mga med rep. They can sponsor the doctors. Does the doctor want like a buffet lunch for his family? Does the doctor want a hotel stay over the weekend? The pharma companies are only too happy to bankroll those things. And so we have to ask ourselves, when something is offered for free, ano ang kapalit niyan? Diba? And in the case of the doctors, they have all these perks, but then there is this invisible expectation that they push the vaccines or they push the medicines or the drugs or whatever equipment that is being offered to them by the companies.
Yes, and one of the things for vaccines is you can look at what the vaccine name is, and you can go online and look for the insert. One of the things that every drug has is a vaccine. You have an insert, which is usually quite a long description of how the drug was studied, what happened with it. Now, for example, the hepatitis B vaccine that they give to babies on their first hours of life, that vaccine was only ever studied for 5 days.
What?
It
5
was
days?
studied for 5 days.
What?
It was only ever studied for 5 days before it was licensed to be
Wow.
given to all babies in the world. Yeah.
Wow.
There's evidence. You can see that it was only ever studied for a very short period of time. And then
Grab.
if we look at there's a table. I can share it next time. I actually have it on a or you can find it on under Children's Health Defence. They have a table which talks about how long each vaccine was studied for. Most of the vaccines on the pediatric schedule were only studied for days or weeks, and none of them were compared against a placebo. A placebo is an inert substance. So they would say, okay, we have Hep B vaccine and we're going to compare it against saline. And then
Mm.
you would see the people who got Hep B, what reaction did they have, versus the people who got saline, who should not have had any reaction. That should be your control. But most vaccines don't do that. They compare one vaccine against another. So this vaccine is only as bad as that vaccine. So for the HPV vaccine, the
Yeah.
HPV 9, they compare, I can't remember, I have to check what they compared it against. But then they have an HPV, the next one they have, I think it's 12 or whatever, how many, it's a different number of antigens. They compared it against the HPV 9. So this vaccine is just as dangerous as that one, therefore we're okay.
Mm.
So, we really have to question what's happening in the medical world.
Yeah.
The US currently, now that Robert Kennedy Jr. is running with President Trump, he has his policy of make America healthy again.
Mhm.
And there was a roundtable conference with Senator Ron Johnson looking at nutrition and looking at environmental pollutants. They've been having hearings, and it's really very revealing that people's health has been so affected by big pharma, big food, big ag, and there's so many chemicals which really don't contribute to health. In fact, they contribute to harm. So it's really very eye-opening, and It's quite wonderful watching these discussions, and some of them are reaching the mainstream media. And if we want our society to be healthy, to return to health, because we're not healthy. You walk around, you walk around the mall, you will see that so many people are obese. Some people are limping.
Yeah.
People do not look well, but this is not how people used to be. This is not how we should be.
Right.
And we do have within our power to improve the health for ourselves and for our children.
Yeah. And well, Super Sally, since you mentioned RFK and Senator Ron Johnson,
Yes.
I understand that there's a new film that's going to be released soon, or has it been released?
Okay. It's Vax 3 is one movie that's coming out. I think that's being released early in October.
Mm-hmm.
But the one we're talking about is the one with Asim Malhotra. It's First Do No Farm, as in farm as PHARM.
Mm-hmm.
This one has just been released a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
You can you can find it on X again. You can find everything on X. They have a page. It's if you want to, it's still for payment. If I think it's $9.99 for 72 hours access, or I think it's probably another $10 to download for permanent access. So
Yeah.
it is for pay. I think we're going to discuss if we can possibly have a
Watch party.
yes. So we want to see if we can have a screening. So I'm going to try and look into what we need to do, and maybe we can have a live showing for people in our network.
Yeah, yeah, and for our regional affiliates, I see some people from Xman Bacolod here. Hilway Panay is also here. And for those of you in the regions, no, baka pwede tayong mag-organize ng screening in our respective areas, no. So maybe Super Sally and I can try to do something here in NCR, and then for those in the regions, I think it's not that expensive, no. If it's $10, that's what a little under 600 pesos.
Correct. It's reasonably priced for 72-hour access.
Right, right. So Kai is suggesting in all SM cinemas, it takes money actually to block off a cinema, and I don't know if SM is willing to do this. No, usually the SM groups, the theater groups, they will usually try to screen only the movies that are guaranteed to bring in crowds. No, so if it's not going to make money, they're not going to sponsor it. But among ourselves, let's do this. Let's organize little watch parties, and also it can be an opportunity to come together. No, I know some of you are already asking what's our next activity after the wellness fair. This could be one of those activities.
Yeah, and Kai had a comment talking about the pediatric vaccination. He's saying, as far as I know, there will be no doctor on site, just the
Hmm.
vaccinator. I did read the administrative order talking about the vaccination. It has extensive details about expected side effects,
Hmm.
and also they're required to have medications on site to handle anaphylactic reactions.
Yeah,
So, and schools are also supposed to have school nurses there. So they may not have a doctor, but they should have nurses present.
they should.
So, yes, there's a waiver. Who is informing them? I think they're not being informed. I think they're being told. They also have demand generation activities, which I assume would all be positive, not negative. So parents are really going to have to find out their information probably outside of what's being told to them by the vaccination team.
That's right. And there was also a question earlier here about the role of the teachers. Kumbaga parang, please plead with the teachers to not comply. But we have to understand that the teachers have a job to do, and ultimately it's really the job of the parents to say no. Kumbaga parang we already have to get used to the fact that no one is going to come and save us. We can
Yeah,
lobby with government. We can ask, for example, Kongdan to hold hearings for us. We can try to lobby with DOH, PhilHealth, with the Philippine government. But ultimately, when all efforts fail, the last line of defense is ourselves. It's our
yes,
ability to say no, to stand up and assert our rights. We shouldn't rely on the teachers. We shouldn't rely on the principals. Let's not shift the responsibility to them, even though they do have some responsibility. But ultimately, it's our choice and our decision for ourselves and our children.
Yeah, I would think that the responsibility of the teacher would be to respect the choice of the parent,
Right, right.
and to be sure that the choice of the parent was honored and respected without
Mhm.
coercion. But I don't think it would be fair to ask more than that of the teachers, because they may jeopardize their positions.
That's right. That's right. And we just want to give a large shout out to all our teachers who are listening. Mga magigiting na freedom fighting teachers who have been on the front lines ever since, trying to educate the children, trying to reach out to the parents, and trying to enlighten them and inform them about their rights and about what they can and cannot do. And by providing the necessary support, I know that many of you have provided invaluable moral support to the parents na nag-aalangan before, but then drew strength when they found out that you either stood up against the vaccines or that you yourselves were unvaccinated, and therefore they knew na hindi sila nag-iisa.
And sometimes we can lead by example. Sometimes you don't have to say very much. You just lead by your actions.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
let's go next slide. Let's see, what do we have next? Okay. This is fluoride again. Okay. We already covered. Already covered fluoride. Okay.
Ito,
Um,
American
oh,
Health.
This is an old article from Lifestyle. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Where am I? I'm in the wrong page. Okay. Sorry. This is the roundtable discussion. America Health and Nutrition, a second option. This is excellent. You can find this. You can go to thehighwire.com, or you can also go search it on X. It's about 4 hours worth. One of the keynote speakers was Robert F. Kennedy. They also had a lot of other speakers who's had absolutely excellent presentations. And I think we need to take a lesson from this here in the Philippines, that we here need to also reform what and how we eat. And I am not aware what sort of chemicals they use in the Philippines. I know they do. I know they use lots of chemicals. If you go up to Baguio and Sagada and go through the vegetable growing areas, as soon
Pesticides.
as you get up there, you will smell the chemicals.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Really?
you can really smell. Now, I think the smell, I think, is probably the fertilizers.
Hmm.
But if they're using fertilizers and monocrops, they probably are also using pesticides and insecticides. So I'm honestly not aware of that.
Yeah.
I guess if possible, we would recommend eating organic food.
Yeah.
But we also have to recognize that that can be beyond the budget of many people. And
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, if you cannot afford organic food, you do need to be aware that there's certain foods which use more pesticides than others. Unfortunately, strawberries are one. Um, so
Mm.
you try and avoid the foods that are very heavily. They have to use a lot of pesticides and insecticides for them to be grown. So you choose what you buy, and then you also consider, wash your food properly before you cook it, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can remove residues as far as possible. So yeah,
Yeah.
we have to be very aware of what we do. So I just recommend this for people. It's 4 hours long, but if you go to X and you search this, you'll find lots of clips of key moments.
Mm-mm. Yeah, Super Sally, you mentioned about cleaning fruits and vegetables. What do you use to clean your fruits and
I'm
vegetables?
pretty lazy. I usually just use water. I soak the leafy greens in water. A lot of people soak. You can use a vegetable wash. I don't know what chemicals are in that.
Mm-hmm.
But even simpler, you can just use a tablespoon of vinegar and
Mm-hmm.
water, and soak your vegetables for half an hour. And if you have greens, your greens are going to plump up and get a lot nicer. They'll get
Mm-hmm.
some water as well. So yeah, wash very well. Peel if in doubt. Avoid vegetables or fruits such as, strawberries, I know, is one of the heavily polluted ones. They have what they call the dirty dozen. There's
Mm-hmm.
certain fruits and vegetables that have more pesticides used than others. I don't have a slide for that. I can do that for next week and tell people what are the dirty dozen.
Mhm.
in terms of avoiding the most heavily pesticide laden fruits and vegetables.
From what I know, it's usually the high value crops, the ones which the restaurants like to use. So probably cauliflower, broccoli. Um, yeah, the more expensive gulay actually. I don't think malunggay or petchay is going to be pesticide laden. Although I could be wrong. It's
You can get it from the side of the road, right?
yeah, you can. Mote
Yeah.
tops, I don't think that's going to be pesticide. The
Yes.
lower value crops are probably
But
going to
I
be.
mean, you would see you. But I mean, if you get your gulai and it's absolutely perfect and there's no insect bites or anything,
Ah,
um, you probably know that it's had pesticides. If your
yeah,
gulai is not absolutely perfect and
mm,
it's got some insect bites, or you can find a bug or two, you know that there's probably not much pesticide.
yeah.
My kids would get upset if we find a worm in the vegetables. They're saying, "Oh, this is good news. It means there's no pesticides."
No, 'cause speaking of that, Sally, there was one time I was eating at a restaurant.
uh,
I was kind of shocked kasi sabi ko, why is there something moving in my salad? And then there was a worm. It's still alive.
a caterpillar. Oh,
Yeah, it was so, it's like, okay, okay. I know that it's organic, but
yeah, yeah.
shit.
Many foods have insect contamination. For example, peanut paste, peanut butter. It's
Mm,
actually allowed to have a certain part per million of insects.
really?
Yes, because when they grind and process the peanuts, there's necessarily insects. They can't avoid them,
Mm,
and even grains. So you can research that many of these food products are allowed to have a certain insect content,
mm.
parts per million,
Oh,
as
true.
recognized. Because how do you grow plant food and process it and eliminate all insects? You can't. You
You
can't.
can. You can.
Yeah.
They're part of the ecosystem. And as Joan Honorides of Exman Bacolod, hi, Joan, said, don't panic. It's organic.
Yes, I like the smile too. Just pick out the bugs before you chew, unless
Yes.
you don't mind.
Yeah. So my suggestion si VA Francis, we have a private chat here. So Super Sally suggested vinegar, no? He suggests vinegar and salt. Kami naman ni Andy, we use vinegar and baking soda.
Yeah, baking soda is a very good product for cleaning, and it's also good if you have indigestion. They say even it's actually good to have baking soda in water. Recommended by my integrative medicine doctor to take a small amount of baking soda and water in the morning on an empty stomach, just to help settle your stomach. And yeah,
Yeah.
they say baking soda is an absolutely incredible medicine.
Mm.
Something we should look into further. It's one of the traditionally used products.
And it's not expensive at all.
Yeah, correct. So that's something I'm making a note here of things I need to research for our next discussion.
Yeah. And siguro just a last point with regard to yung mga pesticides and fertilizers. Um, so this is something that Andy and I share with people. He's spoken to some farmers up north, the vegetable basket of Luzon, if not the Philippines, no? And it's well known that the farmers have their own vegetable plots, no? So they have the ones that's commercially available, the things that they farm in which they sell to market, and then they have the plants and vegetables that they save for their own consumption, you know. And the interesting thing is that they generally will not eat the stuff that they send to market, implying
OMG.
yeah,
OMG. That's
implying
scary. That's
yeah,
really scary.
they know that there's pesticides, they know that it's fertilizers, and they don't want to eat it, they don't want to feed it to their families. So that's a warning to all of us.
Wow, that's not good news. So we really need to be getting to know where our food is coming from,
Yeah,
and maybe we should be more conscious of networking with the farm to table movement, where
yeah,
you can actually buy from specific farms, and maybe your choice won't be so wide, but you know what you're getting and where it's coming from.
right. right? And yun, that's one of the goals sana of Lunas Pilipinas, no? Na for those of you who are listening, who are engaged in organic farming, or you know of organic food suppliers, providers of services, no? Let's try to network. Let's try to support each other. And if we know where our food is coming from, and if we establish relationships with the farmers, we can be stronger together, no? Because like one of the things we know, no, in terms of food self-sufficiency, our local farmers need a lot of help. They're competing with rice imports from Thailand, from Vietnam. We know that the traders make more money from importation than they do from supporting our local farmers, no? And so this is one way of strengthening the movement. Na we become self-sufficient in terms of food. We support those who grow healthy and organic food. And kumbaga, we strengthen each other by patronizing local food producers instead of spending our money on dollars, no? Whenever we buy imported food, it benefits the traders and it benefits the foreign producers. Let's support and buy Filipino.
Yeah, so buy local, and buy as organic as you can, and buy local, and let's this is ensuring our own future,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we don't know what the future holds, but if there's not a good network of food providers and farmers and suppliers of the essentials, if anything goes wrong in the global market, people will starve. But if we have enough people who are growing their own foods, or farmers, and we should also look at urban farming in our
Mm.
own environment. Grow what you can. Maybe you're just going to grow parsley and alubati, and a few bits and pieces, but everything that you can grow personally, even if it's on your windowsill or balcony, will
Mhm.
contribute to the variety in your diet. And when you grow it personally, you know where it's coming from.
Right, right. And so Leonora Dale de Doroy shared that there's an organic farm in Negros Occidental, Talana Organics. So you may want to check that out if you're in the Negros region. And for those in Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, let us know of the organic farms that you're familiar with so that we can support them.
Yeah, okay. So Tanya, maybe we should actually set up a section on the Lunas page,
Mm-hmm.
listing or giving contact details for groups like this that are providing natural, or minimally processed products and foods, so that
Mm.
people can use our website as a resource.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. So
Yeah.
shout out to everyone who's listening. Diba? Send us your details so that we can promote you.
So where can they contact? Where can they contact Lunas for this?
So they can post on the Lunas Pilipinas Facebook page or they can message. They can also email us at lunaspilipinascoalition@gmail.com.
Yeah, so let's really try and get that up in the next few weeks,
Yeah.
and start having a resource for people, because this is also a way of building community when we can provide essential linking up. Because what I see for Lunas is we should be able to have a role in linking people and linking groups.
Right.
So I think that's awesome. That's great. So,
Yeah.
and then we can we'll see how we can develop this further.
Right.
Okay, let's go next. What's our next slide? Okay. Oh, this is more. This is further on the fluoride case. I think we've
Right.
already discussed this, but you can
Yeah.
take a quick look. It just talks about what the case was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
against the Environmental Protection Agency. It's still not. They still don't have the implementation,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that the EPA is going to try and push back and delay the implementation. But the very fact of the ruling will give local councils in the US and Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand has mandatory um, fluoridation. They'll,
Oh,
this becomes a weapon for fighting back.
wow.
Okay, so next slide. Okay, this is misinformation, disinformation, and this one is talking about, in Australia there was a protester. She's one of the freedom fighters, and
Mm.
she's from Victoria, Australia, and she was arrested 3 times in one day in Victoria for
Ah,
protesting the mandates, and
terrible.
so she sued the Victorian government and she won. and they determined that the arrests were unlawful. But even though they determined that the arrests were unlawful, they said that she has to pay $240,000 in costs. Yeah,
Crazy.
so
Wow.
this is a way of when the system works like this, even if you win, you lose, meaning
Right.
that people will be dissuaded from taking cases, even valid cases against the government. And
Yeah.
this lady Monica, she's very tough, and she's an absolute fighter. But
Mm.
just as you said, justice is not available to everyone. In fact, it's available to hardly anyone at all, because we know that if you don't have enough money, even if you're right, you will still be penalized if you win.
Right. Yeah. Terrible. So what's the latest on this? What's the
The
aftermath?
latest is that she's appealing against this,
Hmm.
because this is blatantly unfair.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
is
she
fair
was
victim.
imprisoned for 22 days. She was imprisoned in Victoria for 22 days on charges of inciting others to attend the 2021 process. Those charges were eventually dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Australia has turned, we say Victoria has turned into Vicdanistan. It's like it's turned into a communist country under Dan Andrews. Dan Andrews was the premier at the time, and he
Mhm.
still is, and he's actually just, it's been announced that they're making a statue of him. He's one of
What?
the
What?
very few premiers in Australia to get a statue made.
What?
Yeah, and they're not admitting, or they're not announcing how much the statue will cost or where it will be put. But as an Australian, I have a visceral reaction, a negative visceral reaction to anything to do with the Andrews government.
Oh my God.
So I cannot imagine how they're going to be able to keep a statue up and in good condition, because I imagine that a lot of Australians, including me, are very angry
Hmm.
about what has happened in Victoria and, in fact, in Australia, and the way the government in Australia doesn't seem to be for the people. They seem to be very much for themselves. And we do have some very good politicians who are fighting the system, Gerard Rennick, and there's quite a few others for various smaller parties. But we have what we call the mono party, the Liberal, Labor, and Greens, and they all act together against the people. So
Wow.
Australia has elections coming up. I will be watching. But yeah, so this is so, if this can happen in Australia, this can happen anywhere. Come on, look what happened with Delima in the Philippines.
Hmm.
She
Yeah.
was cleared, but after being in prison for how many years?
Hmm.
The Philippines also doesn't have a fair justice system. You can imprison people on politically motivated charges, which
Right.
may later be dropped. And then on the other hand, you also have people who clearly have criminal activities. I won't mention names, and they
Yeah.
get away with it. They get away scot free.
Yeah.
So,
Just going back to the Victorian government, tama ba, Super Sally, they also passed a law or an ordinance banning urban gardening, urban farming?
I heard about that. I haven't had that verified. I know that New Zealand was also looking at that,
Hmm.
because the intent is to make the people dependent on the government for food. If you can't grow your own food, or you're not allowed to grow your own food, the only way you can eat is if the government gives you food, and then the government controls everything.
Hmm.
I can't imagine how they could do that, because I know that people will fight back. But I
Yeah.
do know that in Australia they are very strict for things like backyard chickens and animals.
Hmm.
So maybe you have a garden, but you're not allowed to have a rooster. You can only have like two chickens or something.
Hmm.
So they're very strict, and they require every dog to be registered, and you have to pay for the registration, of course. And the dog has to be neutered, and they have all sorts of conditions. So the
Am I?
government has in Australia is very much micromanaging the population.
Hmm.
The original role of government should be to protect the people from corporations.
Right. Right.
And instead, it's been protect the corporations and make sure they get as much as possible from the people.
Yeah. That's the
So,
sad part.
yeah, globally, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so next slide. This was Monica. Oh, I'm still following her case. I've been following it for a long time. So,
Mhm.
this is Australia's new misinformation, disinformation bill. The government is trying to push through um, misinformation, disinformation, which will allow the government to mandate what the tech companies can allow Australians to see. And if they don't comply, they will have massive fines. I think they said they could fine them up to something like 5% of their global income for,
Wow.
yeah, massive.
Wow.
And my question is, why can't these global, the tech companies just say no? How can they enforce this sort of thing? Anyway, the bill will allow for total government control, zero accountability, and let the government be the arbiter of truth, which is kind of what Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand did over the
Yeah.
COVID pandemic.
Right.
So at the moment, people who are opposing this are calling for Australians to submit public statements. And I submitted my public statement and I emailed it to about 50 different politicians.
Mm.
We had a list of politicians. So there has been a lot of pushback, and it now appears that I think it's the Liberal Party who proposed this bill is now opposing it.
Mm.
So the good thing for this is that when people really stand up, they can influence the outcome, and we're hoping that this bill will not be able to pass and that it will be permanently shelved. This is, as we said earlier in the show, if you don't have freedom of speech, you're going to lose innovation, creativity, and the potential for advancement because you'll
That's
be stuck in the narrative, in the approved narrative, and you won't be allowed anything else.
that's right. And freedom of expression, freedom of speech is very intimately connected to freedom of thought. It's like
Yes,
it's so human. It's really part of human nature for us to express what we're thinking, what we're feeling. And so
yes,
it's only a matter of time that if you suppress people's ability to speak, they will stop thinking a particular way. So we have to really be on guard against this.
yes. We need vigorous discussion, even argument,
Hmm.
appropriate arguments,
Yeah.
because that's how we can justify. If we argue with someone, that means we have to think about why do we have this position. We
Right.
have to justify, and if we argue well, we may end up changing our opinion, or we may change someone else's opinion because we say, this is why I believe in this, and they say, well, have you thought of that, have you thought of this? And then you will start saying, okay, maybe I need to expand how I think, or maybe there's a different perspective. So it's essentially, it's critically important that we don't have only one side of every
Yeah.
argument. We have
Right.
to have at least two, but preferably multiple sides, because every single topic is multifaceted.
Right. And so that's why here in our broadcasts, in how we conduct ourselves and how we relate to each other, we really encourage vigorous discussion, dialogue, dissent. We don't want people just saying yes. Just because we say this, we continuously tell you, don't take our word for it, do your own research, and if we're wrong, diba, or if we're misinformed, if there's information that we have not considered or there are perspectives that we need to take into consideration, do tell us, and we want to help model what our democracy should look like. And it should be vibrant, it should be active. People should be able to speak your mind. And the thing is, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. We can have disagreements, but we can be polite, we can be respectful, and we can just have like a civilized exchange, 'di ba? No need to call each other names, no need to bash, 'di ba?
And we can disagree and we can still be friends.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, next slide. Let's keep going. So we'll have to. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is Alexis Lorenz. She is
Mm,
the young lady in America who was given 3 vaccines and has had a catastrophic reaction.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it turns out it looks like she had meningitis from the meningitis vaccine.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So,
Wow.
she was given the vaccine she was given. They have meningitis as a side effect. It's
Wow.
also in theirs. They were able to see that there were people who had reactions almost immediately, which Alexis had. She was being first treated very terribly in the hospital, which refused to acknowledge that it was a vaccine reaction, and she wasn't being treated at all. Fortunately, she made a post out on, I think it was Instagram, requesting help, and it was picked up by people in the movement and Children's Health Defence, and they sent a representative there who could be a patient advocate to be with Alexis, and she is now being treated appropriately. So far, so good. She's got a very long road ahead of her, and she's going to still need prayers. But yeah, she's been quite an inspiration, and her story has also hit mainstream media. And this is a very classic example of severe vaccine reaction. And the thing
Wow.
is, when this happens with babies, babies can't speak out, but she's a
Yeah.
young adult, and
Yeah.
she's been able to speak out. And fortunately, she's now getting assistance. So we'll continue to pray for her recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Next, let's see. It's already 10 o'clock, so we're going
Mhm.
to keep skipping on, so everyone can have a good night. So this is talking. This is from the Vigilant Fox. The Vigilant Fox is a very good source of information. They cover a wide range of topics. You can see them on X. I think you can also subscribe and get their newsletter. And the British, they're reporting on the British situation where there are thousands of people in Britain who have been disabled after the COVID vaccines.
Mm.
And this was found out via a Freedom of Information request. They say there's around 14,000 people who applied for compensation through the UK's vaccine injury scheme. But there was, I think, 300,000 adverse reactions reported, but they're only a very small percentage of people have received any assistance. So, this is quite a tragic situation in Britain. In Australia, there's also the same situation. There's been many claims against the adverse reactions, but very few people have been awarded. And in the Philippines, our situation is even worse. We know that we only have about 0.4% of the vaccine indemnity fund has been dispersed, and
Yeah.
hardly anybody has had any assistance.
Yeah.
So that's something we, Tanya and I, are looking at that aspect. If we can have any coordination with Phil Health to see if there's any way to better facilitate people being able to make claims. But on the other side, we also need people to speak out about their injuries and the
Right.
harm that has happened to them.
Right.
We know now that there's many people who have cancer, and these cancers are quite unusual. They're in people who have no risk factors, who have no family history, and yet suddenly they've developed aggressive, severe cancers. So, if anything has happened to you, whether you have a new autoimmune condition, whether you have cancer, you've had a stroke, heart attack, we need you to report to the Philippines FDA. Okay,
Mm.
we have a adverse reporting system. It's unfortunately not so easy
Yeah.
to put in all the details, but it can be done. And we would very much encourage people to report what has happened to them, because if no one is reporting, the government is not going to say anything. And then, if you're willing, you could share privately, of course, with our group that you've put in a claim so that we can monitor. And I am very interested for anyone who's had an adverse reaction, what vaccines you took, and what is the vaccine, the serial number, the number of the vaccines, so that we could actually track if there's certain batches that are having more reactions than others. Unfortunately, the government doesn't seem to be doing that tracking, but we do know that there are hot lots. So we need people to speak out, even if you speak out just to a few people, because we do want to start looking at that data. Particularly now, we're seeing um, another acceleration, it seems, of adverse reactions.
Yeah.
So you can send a message to the Lunas group. We can reach out that way. You could also reach out via the post-pandemic MedHealth group. That's led by Dr. Cynthia, and the president is Dr. Jade Del Mundo. And that group is also able to help people. And I've also been coordinating with them. But we would really like to be collecting hard data as well as assisting people.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay, this one is in Japan, they're about to introduce a self-replicating mRNA vaccine. This is called the mRNA Replicon. This clip is from Aussie 17 on X, and there's a panel of doctors and researchers who are asking the Japanese government not to introduce this vaccine. The concern with this vaccine is it's a self-replicating vaccine, meaning it's a man-made virus, and it can potentially spread from the recipient to other people, which would be problematic. So this is supposed to be introduced in Japan in a few days.
Yikes.
So this is worth watching, but there are other vaccines that shed. I mean, we know that the monkeypox vaccine that is being considered and that has been licensed, that one also spreads from vaccinated people to unvaccinated people. So there's risks. There's concerning risks in this, and this is something to watch. What happens in the next coming weeks and months?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Oh, incidentally, there's also something happening in Japan at the moment. The International COVID Summit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can look into that and see what that for next time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just make a note. Okay, what else? I think we have one more slide, perhaps. The next one is okay.
This one.
Oh, this is talking also about the summit of the future, and this is the House Republicans rallying against the UN and the WHO and saying they need to protect American sovereignty. So they're saying the Summit for the Future is part of the globalist plan, and they're asking people to speak out and speak to their Congress. Of course, this is in the US, but we in the Philippines need to be aware of this as well.
Right.
Yeah. So I think this is the last for today, unless we're going to speak further about the Summit of the Future, or we want to bring that for next.
No, we have to.
Have to. This is yours. This is yours. It's just like 10. Go for it.
No, but I think you prepared the slide, right? You prepared some.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, we
Summit
can
of
go
the Future. This is a summary of the program, which gives you topics that are covered. Okay. Okay,
yes.
Francis, we can go to the next slide.
So as we know, from last weekend, there was a summit of the future that was held in New York. Okay, and this was ahead of the UN General Assembly, and so representatives from all member countries of the United Nations converged in New York. And Super Sally, as far as I know, there were also other groups meeting in New York at the same time.
I didn't look into that.
Yeah, so I saw some posts about the Clinton Foundation meeting at the same time.
No doubt. They're all in bed together, aren't they?
Yeah. So I just don't have the tweet in front of me, but there were several groups that are associated with the pandemic and which are associated with the New World Order converging in New York at the same time.
Well, certainly the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation would be expected to be there.
Yeah.
And also Gavi,
Mhm.
which is very much vested, has a lot of vested interests.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. So anyway, so they had the summit of the future. Okay. And in this summit, and they gathered a lot of youth leaders, no? So they discussed three documents, and the documents were put together primarily by two countries, Germany and I think Namibia. You know, and I've seen some posts about how secretive the whole process was, how it was only these two countries which were um, pretty much doing most of the work. You know, and it's like when you have these kinds of documents, no, whether it's an agreement or a law or a treaty, kailangan involved yung mga stakeholders, no. It has to be something that has wide public participation. It has to be very transparent so that as many voices and as many opinions can be included in the conversation. So that was one of the criticisms going into this summit, that it was a very closed process. Very select people were consulted, and we didn't know about this. No, it was only because the freedom fighting community globally discussed this that it came to our attention. No, wala namang ina-announce yung Philippine government about this until after they had issued their official statements. No, so they discussed three documents: a pact for the future, and then there was also the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I have some further slides which has some points about the Pact
Mhm.
for the Future and the inclusions in that. Maybe we
Yeah,
can go down if we want.
yeah, let's go into that.
Okay. So I think the next slide is just one from Sweden, saying Sweden is pushing back against the globalists. We can skip that quickly, but it looks like not every country is in favor of
Mhm.
what is being pushed. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is the Pact for the Future. There's a summary. I
Okay.
think this should be helpful.
All right. Okay. So as mentioned, no, the Pact for the Future is so this is a resolution that was adopted by the General Assembly. Okay. And just a background on this. Okay. So the UN General Assembly generally meets in New York. This is where the headquarters of the United Nations is. There's also a headquarters in Switzerland, no, but it's generally in New York where all the the major UN developments are discussed, no. And so you know, in recent, I think over the last week, no, there were calls for Israel to stop what it's doing in Palestine. There was a condemnation of the occupation of Palestine. Nagsalita si Netanyahu defending Israel. You know, so the major conversations about world events happen here in New York, and so the Summit of the Future is part of that conversation. And um, the state of the United Nations is this, no. The United Nations was formed at the end of World War II, okay, in the hope that there would be no further global conflicts. Um, you know, after the devastation of World War II, of course, we were affected here in the Philippines. Europe was devastated. You know, you had the Holocaust, the genocide of millions of Jews, Christians, Poles, you know, and the hope of the United Nations was that there would be peace, and peace through what is known as multilateralism. So basically, countries from all over the world coming together in peaceful dialogue, instead of invading each other, instead of going to war, they would do peacekeeping, they would do dialogues, they would have peace negotiations para hindi na maulit yung genocide and the devastation and the loss of life during World War II. That was the hope. And there were many documents that came out of the United Nations in the late 1940s. You had the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. You had the major human rights treaties on civil and political rights, social, economic, and cultural rights. You have international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions, which govern the conduct of war. There are rules, believe it or not, on how to conduct war. No, so part of the rules on war is you shouldn't target civilians. You shouldn't, resort to illegal means like poisoning the water, poisoning the food supply, things like that. May mga rules of engagement, no, to help
You
minimize.
shouldn't have bioweapons.
You shouldn't have bioweapons.
Bioweapons is one of the big ones, but then we look at what's happened over the last 3 years.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
And so you had organizations also like the World Trade Organization, the World Bank. Parang these organizations were set up with noble intentions at the beginning. Okay, and the hope was that we could move towards a world that was peaceful, where people could resolve their conflicts in a peaceful manner, and also a world where there would be more equality, more justice, try to end world hunger, try to end famine, and basically the hope that humanity would move towards a new phase in its development. Now, over the past, 60 or 70 years since then, there have been a lot of failures. Okay, you just need to look at the state of the world right now. There are major wars happening in Russia and Ukraine. You have the Middle East. You have Africa. And you have all of these. Here in the Philippines, there's a danger of war with China, invasions with China and Taiwan, that kind of thing. So ang daming kaguluhan. And then you have the issue with climate change. Whether or not we believe it's a hoax, we cannot deny the fact that the planet is in great devastation. Diba? There's so much pollution.
Pollution and waste management are major issues that need to be managed. And we also have, climate change is one thing which is questionable, but there's no doubt that we do have environmental devastation through deforestation, land degradation, pollution, chemicals, chemtrails, so many different aspects. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So all of that is happening. Okay. And then, and there are people who are warning us that, humanity is in danger. If we don't take care of ourselves, we're going to become extinct as a species. If we don't die from war, we might die from poisoning. There's the danger of nuclear warfare. People are saying that Russia might use nuclear weapons on Ukraine. There's that saber rattling happening among the NATO countries. No? And so we are really in a very precarious situation as a human species. No? And so this is the context of the United Nations right now. Na despite its intentions and its lofty objectives, ang United Nations is mostly failing. You have a Security Council that is composed of countries which are at war with each other, diba? You have China, you have Russia, you have the United States. They have veto powers, meaning that they can shoot down proposals just because they sit on the Security Council. And you have powerful countries like the United States basically not playing along with the rules. And so, it's like you've heard the United States not passing legislation, or they're not complying with their climate change obligations. They're not complying with their other human rights obligations. You have a big superpower basically saying that you have your rules, we have our own rules. We do not have to abide by the rules of the rest of the global community. And so my crisis ngayon sa United Nations, relevant pa ba siya? Okay, so it's in this context now that the United Nations came together. This is its 79th session. Okay, and basically the theme of this particular General Assembly is strengthening the United Nations system. So they want to revive multilateralism, meaning parang global cooperation of all nations towards solving the problems that we face as humanity. And so it's in this particular mindset that they have decided to adopt this resolution, the Pact for the Future, which was finalized during the Summit of the Future, along with the annexes here indicated, the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. Okay, so it was adopted without reference to a main committee. Hindi po ito pinagbotohan. This was not put to a vote, there was an opposition post by Russia and several other countries, and these are mostly the countries that have been the subject of sanctions by the United Nations over the years. And Russia proposed an amendment which was defeated. It was not passed. Okay, and so there's that issue, no, na parang was this really a democratic process? And there was there was this mechanism called silence. Now, unless someone objects, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sally, no, my understanding of the mechanism is that unless someone spoke out against a particular provision, if no one spoke, it would be passed.
Correct. That is correct. So it's a tacit agree. It's actually not democratic at all. It's basically just pushed through, and we don't know if there were guns at people's backs, figuratively or literally. If they don't speak out, you need to accept this.
Right.
And who are these representatives for each country? We don't
Yeah.
know. We don't know who our representatives were, and certainly Philippine Congress was not aware of who was representing the Philippines.
Yeah.
Yet they've just now said that the Philippines is in agreement with this pact.
Right. My understanding, based on the information that I got, is that, of course, Ambassador Manalo of DFA, so DFA was there. Our representative to the permanent mission to the United Nations is there. Vergere was part of the delegation to this, along with some others. Yeah, yun. So,
No
we'll
comment.
be, no comment. Yun. So some background info, no. So I got some information from our insider. Tinanong ko siya, what is Vergere like, as a person? So unlike the other undersecretary who recently retired, who was very madaldal, I guess too madaldal for his own good. Si Undersecretary Vergere is very reserved. She's very warm naman daw, but I guess she keeps her cards close to her chest. She will only speak as needed. Siguro less talk, less mistake. Yeah. So anyway, so for the pact for the future, okay, here are some highlights of the pact. And I mentioned this, no, my caveat is that I'm just doing a first reading so far. Okay, I'm withholding judgment as to the comments of Dr. Malone, Dr. Tenpenny on how bad this pact is. Okay, but let me start out by saying that it is a very general document. It's very general. It's very motherhood statements. Okay, I've come across blogs from different NGOs, different think tanks that have been monitoring this and doing a lot of work on United Nations, climate change, SDG issues throughout the years. And one general comment on that side is that it's too idealistic, it's too general, and it remains to be seen whether the lofty objectives of the Pact for the Future are actually going to be implemented. Ang sabi pa nga nung ibang mga commentators is that it flies in the face of reality. So it tackles matters like terrorism, it tackles climate change, it tackles artificial intelligence, it tackles global cooperation, and parang very ideal when you look at it. And then parang sabi ng mga tao, parang hindi yata nakabase sa katotohanan, or hindi siya grounded in reality, because it seems more aspirational than realistic as to what can be achieved by this document. And so, from my initial reading and from those initial comments, parang I would be very cautious about jumping into any conclusions about the document at this time. And I would like to view this as an opportunity for us to engage. So, ang resolution na ito is what is known as soft law. It is not a treaty. It is generally a statement of aspirations. No? Parang this is what the global community wants to happen. Okay? But because it was not really negotiated, it wasn't really hammered out the way a treaty would be, it is only, kumbaga, guidelines. Kailangan meron pang kilos na gagawin yung mga bansa to make these things happen. So they would either have to pass a more binding treaty, something that's legally binding, or the countries will act on their own to pass legislation. Kumbaga, aakuin ba ng Pilipinas ang mga commitments under the Pact for the Future, and will it follow through by passing law? Okay, and so that is where the real battle is. Now we have to see, sure that the Philippines supports it, but is it really going to take further action to solidify its commitment? Okay, so at this point, pasadahan po natin yung iba't ibang mga provisions or the highlights of this particular pact. So
yeah, we could go to the next slide. It lists the key objectives. It might be easier to talk about that.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I will share the slide. I will share in our chat group. Okay, if any of you want to download copies of this, okay, it's posted here. Okay, it's available. It's available online. You can read it for yourself. Okay, and if you have any views about this, you're welcome to talk about it. Anyone can have an opinion on this. It's not reserved to the negotiators or the lawyers or the government to interpret this for you. Sige, next slide, please. Okay, so here are some of the key objectives, no? And the Pact for the Future is very ambitious because it tries to remind everyone that this is the ongoing agenda. Parang guys, kailangan natin umayos. We have to work together to make these things happen. Okay, so over the past couple of years, we've been talking about Agenda 2030. That was a United Nations document. That's a goal. We're supposed to be working towards certain objectives that should be achieved by 2030. And a lot of them actually are quite noble, no? So there's the talk about sustainable development, okay, the sustainable development goals. And, sustainable development was actually developed in the early 1990s as a concept, no? Some people think that SDGs are a cabal thing. Some people have accused Nick Perlas of being a member of the cabal because he was pushing for sustainable development. We want to remind everyone that many of these concepts have been hijacked. Okay, many of these concepts are fundamentally good or inherently good, but they have been hijacked by elite interests or by other interests. Okay, definitely we need a world that is sustainable. Kumbaga, we need to have a healthy environment. We need to have healthy people. People need to be, they need to have nutrition. They need to have health. They need to have security. The environment has to be protected, etc. Nagkakatalo as to how we protect the environment. How do we attain sustainable development? And this is where the hijacking comes in. The agenda regarding electric vehicles, the agenda regarding shifting to renewables without any viable alternatives in terms of fossil fuels, things.
The prevention, the shutting of farms, the prevention of use of fertilizers. These are, hijacking of noble objectives.
Right. So one of the main objectives, there's a reminder of sustainable development. Okay, the implementation of the SDGs, the Paris Agreement on climate change. So again, we can differ as to whether climate change is really the main threat. Okay, but again, the objectives are noble, no? That we have to protect the planet and we have to stop, going down this road of self-destruction with so much pollution, deforestation, polluting of the oceans, killing of wildlife. They're all interconnected, no? And if we don't take care of the planet, eventually it's going to affect humanity. Okay, so there's an emphasis on the environment. There's an emphasis on shifting to a more sustainable way of life and consumption. There's a reference to international peace and security. There are items here which talk about terrorism. We have to stop terrorism. We have to not use bioweapons. There's an express mention of bioweapons. There's a need to end the war. We need to find ways to resolve our conflicts peacefully. Okay. There's mention about nuclear weapons and the need to stop the use of nuclear weapons. No, and we have to build and sustain a peaceful and inclusive society. Okay, so there's reference to the different wars going on in the world here. Okay, now ito na yung mga medyo dangerous na mga provisions, no? And even though, okay, vaccination only appears once in the text. Okay, you can do a control F, control find, and try to Google vaccination and health. Vaccination only appears once, okay, but it is there. Okay, so there's a mention of universal health coverage for all, and it talks about vaccinations as part of universal health coverage. So that's a red flag right there. And it's also mentioned in the context of the children. Okay, and this is something that Super Sally and I were talking about earlier today. No, parang what's the most important thing to remember? We have to remember that this document and its annexes are directed to our children. So, marami pong mga kabataan, mga youth leaders ang nagpunta sa New York this past week, including our own youth leaders from the Philippines. Marami pong nagpunta ng mga representatives, no? And this document is not for us, the elders, the parents. It's really intended for the younger generation. And we therefore have to have this dialogue with our children, with our students, and with the youth because sila yung intended target dito. Sabi nga nung ating insider, the fact that many youth came to New York means they believe in this. You know, they want to protect the planet, they want to save the earth, no? And so they're convinced that climate change is real. They're convinced that universal health coverage is important, di ba? So we need to engage them in this conversation in a way that does not alienate them or does not, kumbaga, you know, they genuinely believe that they want to make a difference, you know, and so we have to guide them in the right direction and make them see the things that we see that they do not see yet. Okay.
Yeah, so the good things of this need to be taken, but they also need to be aware that this could lead to some undesirable directions
Right.
that would not be in line with what they are hoping to achieve.
That's right. Okay. And so one of the major aspects, no, which is directed at the youth is the emphasis on science, technology, and digital cooperation. So a lot of the discussion here, so of course the traditional human rights appears a lot in this document. Reference to international law is made quite often in this document. Okay. So at least there is that protection, at least at face value. It seems that they want to uphold human rights. Okay. Now, it is in the technology provisions that it starts to get dangerous. Okay. So there are provisions here talking about digitalization, about science, technology, and digital cooperation. And they talk about the importance of every person on the planet having access to the internet. Okay, having access to digital technology. And then merong emphasis dito that the people who are in developing countries, who are in rural areas, who are in the far off parts of the planet have to be reached by technology. Okay. And so on the one hand, it seems good that it's time to bring everyone into the modern era, but we have to remember that digital technology now is synonymous with things like nanotechnology, facial recognition, digital surveillance, surveillance under the skin, digital IDs, MAC addresses, di ba? And so, well, we're going to already start discussing concepts like the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies, nanotechnology, because ultimately, this is the vision of a one world government. Kumbaga, parang under a global governance system that is unified, that is digitalized, and that is working with artificial intelligence, it then becomes possible for every human being on the planet to be surveillanced and to be controlled. This, I think, is the main danger of the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact. They're now openly talking about artificial intelligence, about access to the internet as being a fundamental human right, about universal health coverage and how every person on the planet should have it, along with access to the internet. Okay. And so we know that there have been plans to vaccinate every person on the planet to inject mRNA into livestock, into plants, into food, the food supply, diba? And we now know that there is nanotechnology that allows for self-assembling microcomputers within the human body. Okay, Yuval Noah Harari has talked repeatedly at Davos about how it's possible to control people through surveillance under the skin, presumably through vaccination. Okay, so the injection of nanotechnology that connects people to artificial intelligence through 5G. Okay. I wish this was science fiction. I wish it was just a conspiracy theory, but the science is already there. Okay. And the World Economic Forum has not made any secret about this. It is being discussed openly. It is in their official documents. And people only need to look for the right sources to see that this is already happening, already underneath our noses. Okay. Now, in relation to the vaccines, La Quinta Columna, which I think, Sally, is it a Spanish group or a Chilean group? Would you know? Or Colombia? The people behind La Quinta Columna?
Sorry, I think they might be a Spanish group. I'm
Spanish.
not sure. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-mm. But and in any event, they speak Spanish. Okay, so for those of you who are fluent in Spanish, you could access their site. And I think Doc Romy has been following La Quinta Columna. They have been releasing some exposés about what they have been seeing in the blood or in the cells of vaccinated people, no. And so they have been doing live blood analysis. They've been looking at blood that has been magnified 100 times, so super powerful microscopes showing the existence of self-assembling nanotech, you know. And this is really what's very dangerous about exposing people to digital technology and exposing people to health interventions which contain nanotechnology, which are incorporated into our bodies without our informed consent. So the Global Digital Compact talks about this, okay? And then artificial intelligence, I think, is something that we need to start discussing already, because I think this is really the main danger. Global surveillance can only be possible through a super intelligence that can monitor every person on the planet. Okay, and artificial intelligence is that super intelligence. So most of us, maybe, most of you hopefully have already heard about Chat GPT. Maybe your children are using Chat GPT. Our law students are using Chat GPT to summarize, the cases, to prepare digests. Some of them are even using it to write papers, And buti sana kung ganun lang yung use ng artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence is now being developed like in the form of humanoid robots. The robots which are now coming out are very, very parang mga tao na. In terms of the sophistication, you can have conversations with these humanoid robots, and they're able to make decisions on their own. And that is what makes artificial intelligence different from all the other previous technologies. Sabi nga ni Yuval Noah Harari in one of his interviews, the atom bomb, it was a terrible technology, but ultimately it helped people in the sense that it helped promote peace because people did not want to use the bomb. So it was a deterrent. The presence of a bomb can be a deterrent towards parang further war. Okay, and that's what keeps people from pushing the button, no? The knowledge that there are other countries in the world that could also retaliate with nuclear weapons, no? And so the thing with nuclear bombs is that you need a human being to push the button or to flip the switch. Kumbaga, hindi mag-isang magpapakawala ng bomba yung atomic bomb. But artificial intelligence can make its own decisions. That's what's scary about it, no? It's no longer just a program that does what human beings have programmed it to do. It's now able to do things better, no? So you have AI like IBM Watson that was able to beat the human champion in Jeopardy. You have AlphaGo, which was able to beat the human champion in the game Go, which is so much more complicated than the game chess. Okay. And one interesting anecdote, Super Sally. I was watching an interview with Yuval Noah Harari. No, this is how smart AI is. Okay, so if you're familiar with the CAPTCHA puzzles, do you know that, Super Sally?
What type of puzzles?
CAPTCHA, yung what you do to prove that you're not a robot
Ah,
when you
yes. You have to, yeah.
yeah.
You know, click all the stairs or click all the motorbikes, all of these, yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's a simple program that they do to check whether the one accessing the website is a human being or not. Okay. Now, this is what Yuval Noah Harari said. No, there was one incident of AI trying to solve a CAPTCHA puzzle, and it didn't know how. It couldn't because it's a robot. So what did it do? It went to a website called TaskRabbit, and in TaskRabbit, you can ask a human being to do something for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so this is what happened now. So the AI talks to the human on TaskRabbit and then explains that, can you solve the CAPTCHA puzzle for me? And then the human gets suspicious. The human says, "Are you sure you're not a robot? You know, why are you asking me to do this? Are you a robot?" And then the AI said, "Oh, I'm visually impaired. That's why I need your help. I'm not a robot."
Oh, so the robot knows how to lie.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so the human being was deceived and did the CAPTCHA puzzle for the AI.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's how sophisticated AI is now. And what's very scary about this, Super Sally, is that Yuval Noah Harari says that if this was evolution, this is just AI at the amoeba stage.
Yeah.
This is not even sophisticated AI, you know. So, and this just has been happening over the last 5-10 years.
And it's
So,
happening so very quickly that it's hard to anticipate what it's doing.
right, right. You know, and so part of the conversation in the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact, they're talking about global governance of artificial intelligence, the need to cooperate in terms of how do we regulate this technology that is evolving so quickly, and how do we cooperate on other matters, including outer space, including dealing with terrorism, including dealing with, universal health care for all, those things. And so they're suggesting transforming global governance now to make international cooperation more effective and inclusive. Okay. And I think this now is where the danger comes in with regard to the New World Order. Some people are seeing that this is already initial steps towards consolidating global governance. No, instead of nations having national sovereignty and doing what is best for their national interests, they see it as now the United Nations consolidating power in itself towards a one world government where national boundaries and national sovereignty doesn't matter anymore. Yun.
Definitely something we need to continue discussing and looking in. And the problem is for many people of your and my generation, Tanya, not that we're old, is that this is not something we've grown up with.
That's right.
So unless someone brings this to our attention, we may not realize what's happening.
That's right.
So
That's right.
very, very much we need to be educating our peers.
That's right. That's right. And and I think it's safe to say that many of our listeners are either our age or a little older or a little younger than us. And it would be interesting to know if we actually have young people listening to us. Do we have people in their 20s or in their teens listening to us, paying attention to these things? And the reality is that there's already a divide, di ba, Super Sally? The digital natives, as they call it, and then the digital, what are we?
I don't
Migrant?
know.
I don't know if we are. Di
They
ba?
say Gen X and Gen Z and the boomers, and
The
we're not
alpha.
boomers. We're too young to be boomers.
We're
Um,
Gen Z. I think we're Gen Z.
yeah, Even all these
The Gen Xers.
terminology, it's not like I don't know what this is.
Yeah, yeah. But okay, I think the main thing here is that so there are those of us who are new to this technology. I gave a lecture on AI the other day sa BIR, and it was really interesting. So some of the people there had only experienced Chat GPT that afternoon, you know.
Uh,
So this is new to them. This conversation is very new. Whereas their children are using it on a daily basis, and so that there's already that divide. How can the parents talk to the children if the parents don't understand the tech? They don't understand what the children are doing.
yes.
Ayun. So digital natives and digital immigrants. Thank you, Sheena. Yun. So we are the immigrants. We are not used to this. This is something we did not grow up with. And then our children and grandchildren, they're the ones who know how to use the cell phones as early as 1 or 2 years old.
Which perhaps they shouldn't. I should give a plug. Dr. Del Mundo, she gave a presentation talking about digital technology and what it does to children's brains and how it needs to be controlled. Because she also pointed out that particularly for younger children, even teens, they don't have the self-regulatory capacity to be able to self-limit for something like technology. And that's where parents who didn't grow up with this and who don't realize the significance of this have to learn that they need to step up and help their children control their access to social media and digital technologies. Because if you don't, you won't learn how to do the things that you need to do to function outside a digital society.
Right. That's right. And then people don't realize that digital technology is very addictive.
Oh, extremely.
Yeah. I mean, just look at us, di ba? We're forever on our phones. Like Andy's here.
Yeah.
He's forever on his phone.
Yeah.
And we have to teach the children self-regulation. So I'm very sad that actually last night we were out and I saw this mother and daughter, and it's like the mother was on the phone, and then the daughter was probably 2 or 3 years old lang, was in the stroller, was on the phone. The kid had its own phone, you know and it's like, how is the technology shaping that child's brain,
And
diba?
their ability to do other things and communicate. They actually recommend that children under 2 years old have zero screen time.
Right. It's funny. I heard this story a few years ago. So like, di ba the phone is generally touch screen. It's like you just touch it and something happens, you know. And it's like there was this child that was trying to open a door or something, and the child was so used to the phone that it was just pressing the wall, somewhat expecting it to open by itself, you know. So parang I think if children are so used to living in a digital virtual world, they don't know how to react or interact with the physical world, with
Well,
the human.
that is so true. I was reading a book on a Kindle, and I don't do that. I prefer paper books, but I was reading a book on a Kindle, and the next time I had a real book, I found myself trying to swipe the book. I was like, oh my gosh! And I was like, that was such a what am I doing? I've obviously been spending too much time on digital.
Yeah.
So even for adults, when you see if it does that to our brain, and we're adults and we're mature, what is it doing to our children's brain?
That's right. That's right. So there's really a lot that we need to tackle, no? But I guess for now, we at least we've given you an overview of this, and we've also posted the link. Feel free to Google it. It's readily available, and read it. And we can continue this discussion next week and go perhaps now more into we can zero in on the specific provisions that might be potentially problematic moving forward.
Yeah, and look at then once we understand, then we can talk to other people. So we have a duty to educate ourselves on these things.
Right.
Lifelong learners. We have to be lifelong learners in today's world.
Yeah, that's right. And we have to be aware of what our children are doing, the technologies that they're using, diba? And also the language that they're speaking, no? And hopefully, so our insider from New York, his advice to us, because I was asking him how should we proceed, no? And so the first thing is that let's not automatically condemn this document. Diba? Let's not think that this is a death sentence or that this is already written in stone. A lot of this is going to be dependent on what our government is going to do to implement these lofty objectives, and also what we do. How do we respond? How do we engage government, no? So dapat magbantay pa rin tayo sa Senado, magbantay tayo sa Kongreso, magbantay tayo sa DOH, and let's start to engage on other issues like the central bank digital currency, the digital ID. I saw the slide flashed kanina by VA Francis. Artificial intelligence, nanotechnology. I think we need to start talking about those things moving forward, no? So this is now expanding what we've learned from the pandemic, that the vaccines can actually be a gateway towards the introduction of more deceptive and more dangerous technologies like nanotechnology and the Internet of Bodies.
And there's also the risk that when everything is digitalized, you will not have they will use this as a way of controlling us.
Right.
If you live in a society where all transactions are digital, uh, if there's anything wrong with the power system, you will not be able to access money or buy anything. The other thing, when we're talking about AI systems, they are very, very power hungry. And
Mm.
that is one of the limitations in the Philippines, is the Philippines may not be able to implement these systems because our power supply is not going to be able to stand up to it.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, you may be interested to know that artificial intelligence, if you look at it in terms of carbon footprint, water footprint, and electricity footprint,
Super
um,
high.
it's super high. So I've read somewhere that using chat gpt, no, so the way chat gpt works is you can put in a prompt, you can put in a question or ask it to do something, and it's going to produce a result. And so every time you ask chat gpt something, it takes the power of like half a day of energy use of a typical household.
Wow.
That's how power hungry it is. And it doesn't show up in your electricity bill. It's not so much that, as it is the entire infrastructure that makes it happen. That's where the energy load is.
Well, that's very interesting,
Mm.
and that is going to affect all of these cameras and the AI and everything. I don't think it's going to be implementable in the Philippines rapidly.
Yeah, not rapidly, not rapidly. But yeah, but it's happening. And just a last point regarding water footprint as regards cryptocurrency. So the cryptocurrency, so it's like you have people who are mining crypto, and it's very water intensive. If you have all of these um, computers placed in one place in order to mine the internet to produce cryptocurrency, it uses a lot of energy and it gets very hot. You need a lot of water for the cooling systems. And so it is water hungry as well.
And water is one of our limited resources that needs to be managed.
Right.
Water is one of the key environmental resources.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing with water, no, unless humanity figures out a way to desalinate the salt water in the oceans, we're going to be fighting over the scarce water resources on land.
Well, we do have desalination technologies, but the quality of water that they produce can be variable and they're very expensive. So,
Mm.
Singapore does a lot of desalination for their water supply,
Yeah.
and they also use a very expensive technology to reclaim treated sewage. Is what they
Mm.
have called new water. They treat their wastewater to such a level that it can be consumed again.
Mm.
But that's expensive. That's
Mm.
expensive.
Yeah. But I think it's expensive only because people have not bothered to invest in it.
No, it's a very comprehensive technology. It requires a lot of equipment
Mm-hmm.
because when you treat wastewater, you have this is my business area, this is my day job.
Okay, sige.
When you treat wastewater, you have to remove the organic pollutants. You also have to remove the ammonia and the phosphate, and then there can be trace elements like drugs and other contaminants, chemicals.
Yes.
So usually you have a multi-stage process, which is a biological process using bacteria, and then you have to have filtration processes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of equipment, a lot of technical management. So yeah, it's not a simple system, and it's very expensive to treat wastewater properly. Even even to just treat it to the level that you can discharge it to a river and not
Mm-hmm.
kill everything, but to
Yeah.
treat it to a level where you can reuse it again for potable use, you have to do processes like reverse osmosis,
Mm.
which are very, very fine filtration technologies. So yeah, super expensive, and the technologies are developing. But to build a wastewater treatment plant to treat say 300,000 cubic meters a day, which could be the city of Ortigas
Mm-hmm.
and, and Pasig, that may cost you, 500, 600 million pesos to build the plant. And then you still have to operate it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's expensive. And that's why there's not much of it in the Philippines yet,
Mm.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. But yun, the water shortages, we have to conserve our water because we don't
Yes.
want to get that to that point where we'll have
We
water
have the
shortages.
reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Mm.
Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So we need to be, very aware. And it starts with just making sure that our supply pipes are not leaking,
Mm.
because many places, like before, people criticize Manila water, but before Manila water came in, the leakage in Metro Manila was about 80% of the water produced leaked.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. And
Yeah.
now I think the leakage is down somewhere less than 15%, which is, close to world standard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very big deal with how you maintain your networks. Even before you start looking at what happens in your houses, making sure your toilets are not running, making
Mm.
sure your taps close properly, all of
Yeah.
these things. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
something we can talk about water saving approaches in
Mm-hmm.
a future
Yeah.
session as well. Many topics we can cover.
Yeah. Yeah. So go two more points na lang. So Andy reminded me, for those of you who are here in Metro Manila or who travel to Manila a lot, they've gotten rid of the cash lane in the tollways. So you have to do exclusively RFID. So they've gone fully digital. And of course, the dangers of not using cash. Some of you have posted here in your Facebook na what's happened. You had problems with your digital accounts. The ATM did not dispense money. What happens when the power is down and you don't have any money in your wallet or in your house, diba? How are you able to access the services and the products that you need? So these are the dangers of a purely digital economy.
Yeah, and they've had that in Australia recently where they had major storms,
Mhm.
which created power outages. And a lot of shops, no one could buy anything. And it's not just that they couldn't pay, it's because they also had a digital system for recording stock. So
Wow.
they couldn't even accept cash because they had no way to record what they were selling.
Jeez.
Yeah, yeah.
Goodness. Wow.
Um, yeah, so there's also problems where they have some aid programs in Australia which are based on they're digitally based, so you have a card. But then
Mm.
if there's no power for whatever reason, you can't use your card to buy food.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, very problematic.
That's really crazy. And so let's link that to the current slide about the digital national ID. Okay. And si Gloria says here, no, napilitan po akong kumuha ng digital ID po na yan kanina kasi kailangan daw sa 4 Ps. Pati mga anak ko po, kahit alam ko na under surveillance and controlled pagdating ng araw. So yeah, Sally, have you gotten your digital national ID? I haven't.
No, no, I don't think I can. I'm a foreigner, but I effectively have a digital ID in the iCard. I have to
Mm,
have an immigration card.
for immigration.
Yeah, so no, it's not a digital national. I don't know if I'm supposed to get one or not. I don't think so.
Yeah, hopefully
I don't
not.
know. I have no idea. I guess the immigration will tell me about it eventually. if I
Yeah,
have to. But yeah, I mean, I'm fingerprinted and everything. I can't escape anything.
that's true. Oh, okay. Speaking of that, no. Okay, so in terms of the digital national ID, so actually at the moment there are many IDs that can be used as proof of identity. Okay, so you have like the unified multi-purpose ID, which is useful, I think, for SSS, GSIS, etc.
Driver's
You
license.
the driver's license, yeah. You have the passport, and then I think the BIR issues its own tax identification ID.
The SSS ID as well. SSS has an ID.
I think that's part of the UMID.
Okay.
Yeah, so several agencies use that. Okay. And so this is something interesting, no? So again, I was talking to our insider and I was telling him about how facial recognition is now being done in Hong Kong. Okay. I've noticed there's a discrimination among different kinds of passports. Okay. So like when I was traveling these past few months, napansin ko, um, ako and other fellow Filipinos, we were in the slow lane for immigration. Okay, so when you go to the to the to the airport, okay, so you get in with your passport, and then they will direct you either to the e-gates or to the human immigration officer. And usually mas mabagal 'yon. Okay. And then may mga signs na nakalagay, the flags of certain countries, so mostly mga first world countries, US, EU, Australia, New Zealand, UK, mga ganon. The highly industrialized countries, apparently people have applied for like a fast lane in terms of immigration. Okay. So the way it works is, pag nag-apply ka dito sa program na ito, you're essentially surrendering your travel history to the immigration authorities. Okay? And ano yung kapalit nun? Once you've surrendered that, effectively fast lane kayo. And yung target nga daw are the frequent flyers, the people who fly in first class and business class, the people who cannot be hassled or delayed in terms of immigration. So for them, mas mabuting, they're willing to give up their personal information. They're willing to surrender their right to privacy in exchange for fast processing. Hindi na sila dadaan sa immigration officer. They go straight through the gates. And I think this is part of the come on for the digital ID and all of these other things. No, they want us to give up our rights. They want us to surrender our privacy in exchange for certain incentives, primarily convenience and efficiency. And I want everyone to think about this. No, we use free apps like Google, we use Waze, we use all of these free apps. And we have to ask ourselves, ano yung kapalit nito? How is it that Google is able to offer all of these programs to us for free? What's the catch? The catch is, every time we use their services, they are harvesting our data. They are watching us, they are watching our browsing history, they're looking at what we search for. Probably the camera, for all we know, camera is capturing our facial recognition features. So it's like, di ba, Super Sally, there are those apps where you can cartoonize yourself or something, or create your own AI avatar.
Yes, avatar.
Yeah, you can create your own avatar. So it's fun. People have been using it, but actually it has been capturing your data. You know,
Mm.
so for those of you who've been using the apps, pinaglalaroan ninyo sa TikTok or Facebook, or your kids have been using it seems like fun, but they're actually capturing our data. That's the price that we're paying. So every time we use Facebook, every time we use Google, they are taking something from us. They're taking our data from us and they're using it and monetizing it. That's
Well,
that's really what the digital economy is all about. They are harvesting our personal data.
and we all have the freaky experience where you just think of something and next thing an ad comes up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you don't even talk about it. You just think about it and it comes up.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, really, really.
That freaky, ah?
I mean, obviously, when you search for something, like, if you search and then you start getting ads about it, so you understand that they're tracking us that way. But sometimes think about something, or you might say something to a friend, and next thing the advertisements come up. So they're not just watching, they're also listening.
They're listening. They're listening. And sabi nga, that the cameras on our phones, actually, they can be activated anytime remotely.
Yeah, even without your phone being switched on, there's still a minimum power. So your smartphone cannot be switched off, and it can be tracking you, and it can be collecting data even when you think it's off, because it cannot be turned off.
Right.
Even when the battery is off, because you think, even when your battery is run down, when you turn your phone on again and charge it, your phone is still working, right? You
Mm.
didn't lose everything. If there was really no power, it
Mm.
should be wiped,
Mm.
but it's not. So they say even when it's turned off, they can still collect data, they can still hear you. So the people who are really, the conspiracy people, if they're going to have a private conversation, they will make sure all of the phones are not in the room.
Right. Right. And
And
there's what
it
is
might
known
not
as
be
the Faraday box.
conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy.
What's that? Conspiracy?
It may not. They say it's a conspiracy that you're being listened to, but I think it's actually true. You are being
It's
listened to,
it's
and
true.
we hope that we are low profile and we're not important enough that they want to pay attention to us. But
Mm.
the fact is they can, and what if for whatever reason you get the attention of these AI and you're their target?
Yeah. It's true actually. I was speaking with a very high-profile government official, a couple of years back, and it was in relation to the West Philippine Sea, and they were talking about how China was listening to them. They
Hmm.
were wiretapped by China, and the thing was, at the time, this was a few years ago. This was before the pandemic. The technology was already advanced enough that China only needed 2 minutes to get a lock on their physical location, based on their phones. Okay, so every person, every device has its IP address, which can
Hmm.
be traced to a specific location, and they can track you. That technology exists now, and kumbaga, it's not a conspiracy theory. People who are aware of cybersecurity, of national security, they know who has the technology to conduct surveillance, to track you, and to pin down your exact location, and how long it takes. No, it was just 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, and that's in some of the SB 1869. The Philippines also include tracking and tracing.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's a lot to talk about. But yeah, it's already past 11.
Wow, we've had a very long session tonight, longer than expected.
I know we were planning to end early sa ating mga listeners. Thank you for still
Diane,
being.
yes, thank you for everybody's tolerance tonight, and I think we've actually had a very nice discussion.
Thanks, of course, to your super nature, Super Sally. Super Sally prepared the contents, the main substance for this session tonight. And of course, VA Francis, who's always there. Thank you. And
Yes,
yeah, and siguro before we acknowledge the rest of our viewers, no. Okay, so dates to remember, of course, bantayan po natin yung October 7, yung Operation Bakuna sa mga schools, no. We'll continue to talk about it again next Saturday, and we'll try to get some helpful information out within the week, to help those of you who want to help spread the word, no. That's one. Second is, October 5 is the first death anniversary of Doc Iggy Agbayani. And please keep him in your prayers. Doc Iggy, of course, we remember, he was the guiding force behind CDCPH. Very vocal, was warning us about the dangers of the vaccine, as well as about the possible remedies of ivermectin. He testified in Congress. He was a regular sa huddle, and we remember his life, his sacrifice, and his spirit, as we honor him and remember him on his first death anniversary.
okay. So I'm just going to say good night to everybody. You know what you need to do. You know you need to look after yourself. You need to eat right. You need to sleep. Okay, that's what we're going to finish up now. So and stay smiling, and please connect. please do reach out. As we mentioned tonight, we want to start putting up information on the Lunas webpage for different resources that people might need to access for different things. I think that would be a great community service that we can set up to help people find what they need.
All right. And thank you again, everyone. I just want to read out the areas that were represented tonight based on people's posts. No? So thank you to those who are watching from Cebu, Iloilo, Dumaguete, Bacolod, San Juan, Quezon City, Cagayan de Oro, Isabela, Pangasinan, Negros Oriental, Nueva Vizcaya, Hingoog, Butuan. All parts of the country, I think, all island groups, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, NCR represented. Of course, Pasig tayo ni
Of course.
yeah. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your constant support. Thank you to Team Live for accompanying us tonight. And thank you to Team Replay, which will be listening to us in the morning. We're very grateful for your continued support and for being there, being part of this amazing community of people who are dedicated to freedom, dedicated to truth, and dedicated to humanity. No? Let's remember that we do this not only for ourselves, but for our children. We need to remember that we have to protect the future of the planet, and the future is our children. Okay.
Amen.
And so, as we go about, as we go into the weekend and as we go into the week ahead, please know that amidst the chaos, amidst the confusion of what's going on in the world today, let's continue to put our faith and trust in God. Hindi tayo pababayaan ng Diyos. He has brought us to this point safely and He has protected us. And let's continue to invoke His protection and guidance as we navigate through this very challenging time for humanity.
Yes.
Let's bring our intentions to Him. Let's bring our loved ones and our hopes to Him. And trust, that as long as we align our will with the Lord's, He will guide us to what we need to do, and He will protect us. And as it has been said, if God is for us, who can be against us? So continue to be a beacon of light, continue to be a beacon of love in your respective communities, and please know that we love you very much. We love you all. We thank you for being part of this broadcast and being part of this amazing Lunas Pilipinas community. So from Super Sally and from Andy, Doc Mervic, who we know is here with us in spirit, and from me, we love you all. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, good night. Love you all.
God bless you.
God bless and sleep well. Bye.
Well, and bye.